From the iHeartRadio studios in New York City, come fans of the greatest rock and roll band hailing from Hollywood, California. Dissecting all things Guns N' Roses and anything else distorted. But you know what the fuck you are! This is Appetite for Distortion. Try it again!
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode 42. Jackie Robinson. Here's the Jackie Robinson of journalism, my special co-host for today. Art Tavano, what's going on, buddy?
Let me just say for the record, I've pioneered nothing in my life, so that is an absolute myth. I will never compare myself to Jackie Robinson. I'm more of a Pete Rose.
Okay.
Kind of how I like it,
All
okay?
Right.
Anyone can decipher that however they want. I'm more of a Pete Rose.
All right. Well, I was just basically trying to shoehorn in a segue from number 42 to my special guest co-host. It wasn't a good segue, but that's what I do. I make things weird and awkward, which hopefully I won't do too much with our guest calling up in just a few minutes, that being Bryan. I'm just in shock that he agreed to do it. We've spoken about Chinese democracy, not just with Scotto on this show, but with you, with Walker, of course. It's just getting more of a piece of a puzzle of that era of Guns N' Roses that we hope to find out more, and of course find out more about what he's up to. We just finished a tour with Buckethead, of course, another beloved former GNR member. But we'll get to that in just a couple, because I want to catch up with you, Art. What are you up to other than fighting with people on Twitter with Taylor Swift fans?
Yeah, I'm always doing my political writing stuff. I'm writing for Playboy. That's where I'm at now. The LA Weekly stuff is over. I'm no longer writing for the LA Weekly. I don't think it's a secret, but they got bought out and whatever. I might write for them again, but those days are sort of behind me. All my cool GNR work for the LA Weekly is still there, and that's really all I care about. Playboy's awesome. Working on a story for Playboy on women's professional wrestling, which is going to be freaking badass. I think GNR fans will appreciate it because, it's funny. It's all these female wrestlers today, they're all influenced by like metal and hair metal from the 80s. Like there's this girl named Toni Storm. Her entire gimmick is that she's Nikki Sixx.
Okay.
I interviewed Alundra Blaze this morning for 2 hours, and all she talked about, seriously, like 55% of the interview was her talking about Guns N' Roses and how she hung out with Cinderella in Japan.
Really?
And all the hard rock kind of. It's weird because pro wrestling and hard rock, like in the 80s, like I didn't even realize. I kind of did, but it's literally like there's a partnership in those two worlds that was so badass. For me, it's like I don't even know. I've been a fan of both genres, but they kind of come together sometimes, and I dug that. Other than that, man, look, it's the 10-year anniversary of Chinese democracy. So you can imagine what my life is going to be like this year. There's going to be a lot of fucking Chinese democracy stories, interviews, notes, tweets, online discussions. So that's what I'm doing. I'm focusing on Chinese democracy when it comes to GNR for the next year. I am working on a Chinese democracy story. I don't want to say for who or what it's about, but that's happening. Expect something like that probably sometime this year. I'm not going to say when. And then I'm working on my book, man. I'm writing my book.
Right.
Writing my book about Guns N' Roses. That's pretty much it. And I think, dude, I don't even know how to express how excited I am that we're talking to Bryan, by the way. I just can't even.
I was afraid to kind of announce it because I don't like doing that on our Twitter and Facebook because these things may not happen. You never know. And I don't know, people cancel, but he was very cool and organic and just like, yeah, dude, just from the get-go and just the reaction from you listeners and just the questions. And I'm definitely going to get to some of the questions that you sent in to me to ask Bryan. And yeah, no, just the fact that, the last 3 episodes, of course, we're going to talk to Bryan in just a couple minutes. Pumped. Episode before, Christopher Thorne, Blind Melon. Growing up, listening to Blind Melon and Guns N' Roses, that's my era. And before that, I'm still riding high with the London Hudson interview, which really garnered a lot of attention, picked up by a lot of different outlets. And I would say the coolest thing and funniest thing that I did, I don't know if with any of your articles, as far as, they've gone viral, but I don't know as far as crossing a bridge over to another language, that
Right.
there was a couple places. One, I'll just give them a shout out. Slash's fan page. It's just called that. It's like 200,000 likes. So I mean, if you look for it, you'll know that's the one. But it's out of Mexico, and they translated the interview, and that's just so fucking cool. And I don't, even though I've worked on Spanish broadcasts before, still no habla. But thank you to Facebook for doing that translate thing. So I'm talking to fans, writing in English and using Google Translate to Spanish. And I did the same thing with this Dutch Guns N' Roses site. And someone's like, that's such a stupid name. And I'm like, again, I'm translating all this from Dutch. And I'm like, are they making fun of London's name? And even the moderator's like, London? He's like, no, the podcast. I was like, what? So I'm trying to like argue and write in Dutch. It's just a play on words. But I'm like, a play on words is an English expression. So play with words and just try. So it was a very interesting fallout. Ton of new listeners since that episode. And just getting more exposure, which is what you do in your life when you started writing, and of course getting up to bigger publications, of course including Playboy. So it's just been a very interesting ride, and I'm super excited, like you, riding this crazy guest wave. It's not always going to be like this. I'm doing my best. I'm setting the standard high, but the fact that we're going to talk to Bryan is just fucking awesome, and thank you for joining me on this episode as special guest co-host.
Beyond excited, and I think that I have so many questions about Buckethead and Primus and Axl. It's like, and we're gonna, holy shit! And he's cool, right? He's like, he wants to talk about everything. He's open. He's an open book. He's cool. He's down to earth, and there's so much shit to go over with Bryan that I mean, anyone who's ever given a shit about rock and roll, about Chinese democracy, about Primus, about Axl Rose, about Guns N' Roses, about Melissa Reese,
Tom Waits.
I mean, and there's so much to talk about. I got to interview Melissa Reese a year ago for the LA Weekly, and we talked about Bryan. A good portion of the time, actually, we talked about Bryan. A lot of it never made the article, but, now we get to interview Bryan, and it's like, I'm like, this is like basically a dream come true for any GNR fan. At least for me it is. I'm such a nerd. So for me, every single component of the GNR universe is just exciting and juicy, and I hope the fans, at least I hope we do the fans justice and give them something cool to remember.
I think we will, and I think the timing is perfect because Bryan is calling right now.
Holy shit. Okay, let's do it.
All right. This is just unbelievable. I remember the first time I saw Bryan, which was an awkward, I always end my interviews awkward and start them awkward. I was in the basement of my mom's house when I was still living at home. And it was me and my then girlfriend at the time, and we had on the 2002 Video Music Awards. And there were rumors about some big band showing up. And without making Bryan completely uncomfortable, me and my then girlfriend were doing stuff. And then all of a sudden we hear Jimmy Fallon.
MTV has asked this next band to perform at the VMAs for like the past 4 years. Well, tonight, not only did they show up, they're even taking requests. I feel kind of weird introducing like one of my favorite bands of all time. I just wanted to say, please, it's been great hosting the VMAs here in New York City. This is the best city in the world. And if anyone lives here, you know how powerful it is and how electric and how energetic, and the greatest city in the world. For those of you who don't live in New York, welcome to the jungle. Ladies and gentlemen, Guns N' Roses!
The curtains go up. That's Axl? Okay, I know that's Axl. I don't recognize him in the jersey and the dreads, but I know that's Axl. Is that Slash? Wait, well, that's not Slash. Did he change the top hat into a bucket? I'm like, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I really don't know that drummer. It was a totally new band. And that's when I fell in love with Guns N' Roses again, learning more about you. So we're many steps before we get to that point in your life. First of all, Bryan, welcome.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be on this. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Do you prefer Bryan, or do you prefer? I'm not going to call you by your Hebrew name or whatever you want to call it.
No, I mean everybody. Yeah, I mean my mom calls me Bryan at this point, so I figured everybody calls me that. So my daughter even says Bryan, so I'm just like, oh shit.
Wow.
But, yeah. So because everybody just it's stuck. It was a nickname that was given to me when I was in going to PIT, that Percussion Institute of Technology, you know, MIT or whatever in Hollywood. And I was always just, you know, I really wanted to practice like all the crazy Terry Bozzio stuff because I was a huge fan of Terry Bozzio because of Frank Zappa.
Cool.
And then his missing person stuff and all that stuff. So, you know, I was just learning. I was trying to learn this portraits and rhythm book, and it's a classical snare drum book that Anthony Cerrone wrote, and it's just it looks like someone just threw, you know, shit on fly papers. You know, it's black basically of how many notes are crammed into each bar. And so, you know, everybody kept saying, what are you, some kind of brain? Because, you know, I wanted to sit there and learn this because I kept thinking, Terry Bozzio learned this. So if I learn it, I'll be as good as Terry Bozzio or something, you know, some stupid shit like that. So that's just where the nickname came from. And then since then, you know, it just kind of stuck. All my friends started calling me it, and then it became a thing. And I thought, you know, might as well just keep it. Sounds kind of cool, a little different. So
it does sound cool. I mean, if anyone says brain, I either think of you or I think of Krang from the Ninja Turtles. I think they're both on par.
Right.
Shredder, why haven't you completed my new body?
Yeah.
So where are you calling from us? Where are you calling from now, by the way?
Right now, I'm in the Bay Area, actually, because I'm as stupid as it sounds, I'm taking not pro, but he was a pro, taking tennis lessons. And so,
oh yeah, cool.
That's what I come up to the Bay because there's this guy that is really rad that teaches up here.
I'm not a major tennis fan, but I mean, assuming it's not Pete Sampras or anything.
No, it's not that, but you know, he was on the tour for a while, but I guess, you know, I just got into tennis. It was a way to just kind of, you know, lately, the last about 2 years now. And it's just a way to get away from music, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those things. I was into golf for a long time. Like, you know, I'd take my clubs out on the GNR tour, the Primus tours. So I got into that. And then, I don't know, all of a sudden I played tennis in high school, and I was just like, you know, I want to get back into tennis. So right now I'm just up in the Bay. I'm up in the San Francisco Bay Area because that's where this guy is, and that's where my daughter lives right now. So I come and visit her every other week anyway. So I'm up here right now, and then I go back to L.A. Probably tomorrow or the next day.
Oh, nice. And Art, where are you now? Because how far away are you from Brain?
I live in Burbank, California. So, Bryan, you know where that is, Burbank? You know where that is. So I live like next to like Disney Studios and Warner Brothers.
Oh. I'm a New Yorker, so I don't know anything on the West Coast. So that's why I'm asking. I'm like, oh, you're on the West Coast. You must know each other. It's like the same thing when anyone meets me. I'm like, oh, I'm Jewish. Oh, do you know this person? Yeah, we all meet.
It's so big here. You can't. It's like Burbank's like an hour and a half away from like Westwood.
Oh, okay.
Like an hour and a half away from like Venice. Everything's so far away from each other. No one ever leaves their neighborhood.
Gotcha.
I used to live in Studio City, but my studio was in Venice. You know, I shared a studio with and like commuting. You're absolutely right. It was like it felt like a different country. You know, I was like, oh, I got to go to work. It just felt like, okay, I'm going to, you know what I mean? I was just like, okay, I'm going to a whole different, like, you know, state to just work. You know, because some days it would take forever. And the culture, it's just weird. It's just nobody kind of crosses over because it takes too long. You know, it's like ridiculous. But then I moved.
Speaking of Los Angeles, I just want to like jump in on one quick question. Is there like a studio or a room that you just love playing in or like recording in the most, like where your drums sound the coolest or like the vibe is perfect for you? Is there like a favorite spot for you?
Well, you know, I mean, spots like that when I was growing up were more in the Bay because I was doing more drumming as far as like, you know, in the studio almost every day. That's when like the ad shit was booming out here in San Francisco. And, you know, I'd get like 3 calls a day. You know, I felt like I was the Vinny Colaiuta or Steve Gadd of you know, the Bay Area at one point because I'd be getting 2 or 3 calls a day. So, you know, there were studios and stuff that I would just love. But, you know, recently, you know, I've been doing a lot of playing drums. I've been playing a lot of drums for video games and shit. So, you know, so, you know, we use East West a lot. And I really got into, I think it's not the big room, but it's the medium room. I think it's Studio C in the back. I think it's
Wicked.
I forgot but it's just like a perfect size. I think that's where the Chili Peppers were doing an album. Not their last one with Danger. I think they did the last one with Danger Mouse, right, or whatever. But the one before that was Rick Rubin. I think that's the room they used, and we started doing all the recording there, and I just loved it because their big room was just too big. You know, it's almost like recording at Skywalker because we did a lot of I did a lot of recording up there, and
oh shit.
And it's just too big of a room though. You know what I mean? You get lost in it. And that's how kind of the room at East West, their big room, feels. But they have a smaller room, and the medium-sized room in the back. And that one just seemed to drums just sounded great in there. I just loved it every time we did.
It's cool because you've been called upon to like play for Primus and Guns N' Roses, and you have to go in and kind of add your own touch, or even add your own sort of rhythm and your own sounds to these songs, or learn their songs. Is that like an experience you still crave? Like a new band hits you up, you want to go do that with them, or do you crave or prefer like a video game studio hitting you up with like a title and saying take over and just create some music for this? What's like a more creatively inspiring experience for you?
Well, you know, it's funny because I started really, trying to just really be like, I was really into fusion. And I mean, I grew up with rock, like, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Rush, because I was kind of gravitating towards drums at that point. So, you
got to go to Neil Peart. I mean, if you're a drummer.
Yeah. So, the Keith Moons, John Bonham, Neil Peart, all that kind of stuff. I was really into it, or Pat Travers, because Tommy Aldridge, I was just a huge fan of Tommy, and just that whole thing. As I was growing, then when I started studying music, I started learning how to read, taking lessons, doing all that stuff, I started getting into fusion. And, with fusion, it's more like, it's like beating off or whatever. It's like, you're just like getting, you're like tons of notes, different odd time signature. I got high on my own supply type of thing.
Okay.
So it's funny because when I joined Guns, I didn't, of course I heard the album and I knew about Appetite because I, just saw it. It was huge. I think at that time, they were doing it was the Monsters of Rock with like,
right.
I kind of knew Kurt Hammett a little bit, and because, I was in this band Godflesh, and he was a huge Godflesh fan, so he was hanging around. And then I knew Mike Patton, so Mike was on that tour with Faith No More, so he was how crazy it was and just what was going on. And so, I was just always intrigued and kind of just a fan of just Axl and his vibe. I'd see the NWA hat with his, crazy outfits and shit. I'd be like, what? Because I was always into hip hop also. At that point I was getting into hip hop. But so I was into like hip hop and fusion. And it's funny because when I joined Guns, I thought it was going to be easy. I thought, shit, it's just rock, man. It's just easy. And then Tommy Stinson, who was the bass player at that time, I remember, I don't know if we should get into this now. Is this too early to start talking about how I got into it or what?
I like how you noticed that. No, this is a good, let's put a pin, let's tease all the listeners, and we're going to get to that. Because I want to go, and you did notice, I want to find out a little bit more about Baby Brain. You grew up on the West Coast, right? And I want to create the picture and how you got there. So no, I like it. It's like in a movie. You're foreshadowing what's going to happen. Oh, let's go back to the beginning and build the story.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. I just wanted to catch myself because it was interesting in the question. That's a great question because it really threw me. But yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, so basically I was into, I was always into rock. I was like, like just a huge, like, fan of like those particular bands like Neil Peart, Rush, which had Neil Peart, and I was at that time I was toying with guitar. I was trying to do everything. I was taking guitar lessons, bass lessons, piano lessons, and at first, before I even started drums.
You just knew you wanted to be in music? You didn't know how, though?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. I wanted to be in music. You know, I was hanging around a bunch of fools in school that had played instruments. So, you know, in one group of people I hung around with, they needed a bass player. So it was like, okay, shit, I'll get a bass and learn how to play some bass. And then it was like, oh, you know, we need a guitar player. So I was like, okay, I was taking lessons, trying to learn guitar. And then piano was something I was just doing, you know, because my parents were just like, hey, take some piano lessons. And then, but keyboards were kind of uncool. You know, like it was like in Ted Nugent. I don't know if you've ever seen that video. It's like one of my favorite videos where he's in the woods and he's got like his guns and shit, and he's like searching for the enemy, and then he finds the enemy and it's a keyboard.
No, I haven't seen that video.
It's awesome, man. And so, you know, since then I've been, you know, keyboards are fine in rock, I guess. I don't know still, but I guess
you had two keyboardists and guns. But I guess we'll get to that.
yeah, we'll get to that. But anyway, so you know, it was kind of like, okay, so it's going to be either guitar, bass, or drums. And then a friend of mine, you know, who was playing in school, you know, during like recess and shit, you know, it'd be like, hey, today in the quad, you know, Merv's going to be playing with his band. And, you know, he was playing Led Zeppelin. He was playing, Black Sabbath. He was playing all this rock shit. And I just was like, oh, my God, you know, I want to play with this guy. And he was a guitar player. And, you know, and he had in his band, he had also a bass player. So that they were really tight. But it was a drummer who was the kind of the loose cannon. And then at that time, my sister was like, hey, I know Mark. And, you know, they kind of are looking for a drummer. And I was like, fuck, okay, I want to be in this band. I'm going to learn drums. So, you know, I started listening to like Rock Candy, Ronnie Montrose, all that kind of shit,
Nice.
With, you know, was kind of big at that point with even Journey, old Journey, you know, because it was I was big. So like Neil Sean with that whole Cahootech, I think it was, that, you know, like it was one of the first shows I saw was like Journey in some, you know, like Civic Center show or something. And then so I was like, I'm going to play drums. I think this, you know, and then I got into AC/DC. I remember I was into skating really heavily. And this dude Blackheart that was his name. You know, he had the coolest name in town. And, you know, he was like, oh, Blackheart's here to skate this pool, because we'd be just cruising around trying to find pools to skate, because that's when it was like popular to like find empty pools around town. And I was kind of living in suburbia, so it was like, you know, empty pools were like things that you could find very easily if you just cruised around and just like went into rich neighborhoods, and just looked over the fence, you know. So there was this one pool, and the guy was that we were skating at, and the guy on a ghetto blaster was cranking AC/DC. And I was like, uh-oh, like this is the shit right here. Like this is what I want to play this shit on drums. And so, you know, I found a teacher, got in, you know, brought him AC/DC, and he was like, oh yeah, you know, this is great stuff. And he showed me it, and I just would play the songs. Then my sister said, hey, you know, this Merv guy needs a drummer, and he wants to jam with you, because, you know, she's like 2 years younger than me, and so was this guy. And so, and I started kind of late, because I was really into skateboarding more than anything. So I was trying to become a professional skateboarder, but then I broke my foot, and I kind of had to stop skateboarding. And so I got into just practicing on a pad and, you know, learning stuff. And then when my foot got better, I really dove into drums. But to make a long story short, I joined his band, and it was like, well, you're going to be a drummer. And then since then, I swear to you, I just haven't stopped. The phone kept ringing. One thing led to another. You know, I didn't go after it like, oh my God, I was like, I have to be it was like, well, I could have went bass or I could have went guitar depending on what situation happened. So that's sort of how I got into the drums. And then I just basically started meeting people and, you know, just hanging out and playing, and then people offered me gigs, and I just kept going and going. And I swear to you, I never thought about it since then.
That's insane, because of course, Axl famously left Lafayette and, you know, of course, captured in the Welcome to the Jungle video. And last episode, speaking to Christopher Thorne, where he was in some small town in Pennsylvania, and he's like, I got to move out to LA. This is what I want to do. You just found it. You happened to be there. And like you said, the phone hasn't stopped ringing? Like, so there was never a point for you where, oh my God, this is happening for me, or is it just has been a nonstop ride?
It's been a nonstop ride,
Wow.
dude. Yeah, that's what's so crazy. It's just one thing led to another. It was just like, okay, I met some guys jammed around town. Then just the biggest band at that time there was this World Beat movement, they called it, in San Francisco. And I think David Rubenstein or something was who was like Herbie Hancock's manager at the time, was like heading this whole huge movement of like three bands were blowing up. It was like the Freaky Executives, Big City, and then the Looters. And I think he was managing all of them at that point. I'm not sure, though. He might not. But he was definitely managing Big City. And they saw me play with this band I was playing around locally in town. And then they asked me to join their band. Then from there, I met Les. And then Les asked me to join Primus. It was like that kind of a thing. And then Les was like, hey, man, this guy Tom Waits is looking for a drummer. It was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. You know what I mean? It was just like, and then I had met Buckethead. And then, and then blah, 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 it just kept going. I don't know if it's still too early to keep going in that way. But that's sort of, it was that's weird. I know what you mean. A lot of people, like I have friends now that are moved to LA and they're just like, I'm trying to become, get in a band or become a drummer or whatever. Yeah, I luckily in drumming.
Why do you think that is? Do you think, you're obviously that good, but you've had to develop your talent, or do you think it's your personality why so many people want to work with you?
I think it was really the area. Like, I think, how, like, it's like being the big fish in the little pond.
Sure.
Worked for me here. It never worked in LA for me. It was like there's just so many great drummers and so much talent there, or New York. I happened to just be lucky and be in the Bay Area where I think it was just, and I worked my ass off. I'd play with anybody. I was playing 3 or 4 shows, a week somewhere in San Francisco with 3 or 4 different bands, in every club, any possible two gigs a night type shit. Like I'd go from the Kennel Club over to the Night Break, over to the IB, like in one night, playing with 3 different groups. That's awesome. I just became like the drummer of like, Bryan could kind of play a punk rock thing. So I'd play with like, I think they were called the Frontier Wives at that time. And they were like a punk type of band. And it was like, Bryan could also play, like weird, moody, Depeche Mode type stuff. And there was some electronic, band coming up trying to do that shit. And I'd play with them. And then I'd go and, and I'd literally put like change in the car and put it on different outfits for the gig. So,
that was your own little changing room. You did your own little dressing changes in your car. Yeah,
because I was like, oh shit, I'm playing with these guys tonight and they're this style and this thing. And I don't know, I'm half Italian, half Japanese. And I think in some ways, being like in school, I wasn't fully, with all the Asian dudes and my full Japanese friends didn't really accept me as like a full member, but I could kind of hang. And then the white skate punk dudes were like, okay, well, he's got a different look. He can I kind of went everywhere. And so that's sort of how I felt like I was with drumming. I kind of just floated into different things and I can adapt.
Is that why you think you never, like you're not with a specific band? Like you're still famous regardless, working with all these famous bands, but it's not like Bryan from this band and everybody's going to know. It's not Joey Kramer from Aerosmith. So right. is there a reason why, like, I guess, are you relating to maybe your ethnicity as to maybe ingrained why you like bouncing around, and do you feel like you don't have a home? Not make it sound sad, but
I know. I mean, it's funny, dude, because it kind of, it's weird because I'm not like even like Richard Fortus or whatever, right? Like he's kind of like he's kind of like the Josh Freese of guitar. Mm-hmm. I look at him kind of, you know what I mean? He can play anything and he can join, and play with anybody, and play on a bunch of people's albums. But he was never really a member. But then I'm not really looked at as a studio cat. But then I was in like Primus for long enough to feel like, oh, he was almost a member, I guess, or so, you know what I mean? I was in it for like 6 or 7 years, and they were like, okay, he was in Guns N' Roses. Okay, he did that for like 6 or 7 years, but is he a member? I don't know. Not yeah, but no, but but a little more than like what Richard was doing before he joined Guns.
Right.
Now you can feel like, oh, he's been in Guns long enough. I remember last time I saw him, Axl was making a joke or whatever, like, whoa, I think he's been in the band longer than I have, like one of those things. Like, he's still here, like, 15 years, like that kind of a thing. And, but, yeah, so it's, it's interesting. But then I'm still known as a studio musician, probably, in some worlds, like, like people do still hire me and think of me in that way. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I wish I did stick with one thing, as I'm getting older now. I kind of regret that I left, things maybe too early.
Oh, that's
whether it's been Primus or even Guns, you know what I mean?
Then I guess let's go first there with Primus, because that's the first band. How did that first come about, and would you consider that your first big break?
Yeah, definitely. That was one thing that it was really funny, because the way how I got in the band was it was like I joined that band Big City, and there was this dude loading my drums in, and it was actually Les, and Les was like, "Hey man, I play bass," and the guitar player
you sound like him.
Big City was like, "Hey man, you gotta like go see this band, man. They're killer." Like, it was one of those things. And then, I think they were opening for the Chili Peppers at the Berkeley Square in Berkeley. It was kind of this cool, club where all those bands kind of came through: Fishbone, Chili Peppers, all that kind of funk thrash group of people, were playing at this place, and Primus opened, and I went and saw him, and I was just floored. I was like, oh shit, this guy's sick. It's like, he's the real deal. And so it was just like, I met Les that way, and then I was supposed to be in the band, and then that's when I I think something came up where I was like supposed to play in this somebody else was asking me to play or whatever. So there was just kind of this thing where I was in the band, but then I kind of just bailed, and then Les got Tim. And then Tim and Les and Lur, it blew up. All of a sudden it became big because it got picked up by Interscope. They were one of the first bands on Interscope. And then they started getting big, and and then they got bigger, where they're like headlining Lollapalooza, with Alice in Chains and doing all this crazy shit. And, and they became their own thing. Kind of like the new Rush to me or something, you know what I mean, with the way Tim played and all that kind of stuff. And then I was just kind of at that point, I think that was my lowest point in drums, where I was kind of like it wasn't like the phone wasn't ringing for like a while. I was just kind of going, is this really what I want to do? It's like, now I'm starting to see like, like I had like a year of where I was like just trying to hustle gigs, or something. And I was like, shit, I wonder what, and that's when Les and Tim kind of had a falling out. And he was like, hey man, I think I remember I was just sitting there, and I was just like, kind of just like not sure what I was doing. I was like buying some electronic gear at that point, and I was trying to figure out how to do some, like, I guess, pseudo beat making or composing at that point. And I remember the phone rang, and it was Les, and he's like, hey Bryan. I'm like, he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, just kind of sitting here, just fucking around with some gear or something like that. And he's all, well, what if the Red Hot Chili Peppers called you right now and asked you to be the drummer? And I was like, well, that would be kind of cool, I guess. I'm not really doing anything. He goes, what about if Jane's Addiction called you right now and said you want to be the drummer? And I was like, that's, whatever. And then he was like, what if Primus called you? He's like, what are you trying to say, dude? He's like, I don't know. Come up here. Let's do some jamming, I think Tim's out. So I was like, okay. So, you know, I went up there and I jammed, and Les was like, well, you want to play? You know, he was like, because I didn't know at first. I was just like, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think it was that kind of aloofness that, and I'll get into that with even Axel when I was dealing with their camp and stuff. It was kind of a funny story. But with Les, I was kind of like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean you don't know, dude? We make a lot of money. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of cool. You know, and I just kind of, he was like, all right, well, you're in the band. You know, and it was like, I was like, okay, cool. So, yeah, at that point, I was like, uh-oh, because I remember he was like, okay, so I'll see you at rehearsal on Monday and, you know, and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and the next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, and I was like, oh, shit, these guys are serious. Like, we got to record an album, and then we go on tour for 18 months. And I was like, so to answer your question, yeah, I mean, it was like, I was like, oh, shit, now I think this means I'm a drummer. Like, you know, this is a job.
And
like,
after all those years of this sport doesn't work, this instrument doesn't work, I mean, for it to click at that point, I mean, that's why I like to find it out when it clicks for someone like you. It
got serious when I joined Primus, and I was like, oh, shit, I get it. I have to be somewhere. And that's what I meant by, like, there was that, you know, period where it was like about a year where I was like, wow, oh, okay. You know, the phone's not ringing like it used to, where I was playing with these and then going down with them, getting a studio gig here. And that's when, like I said, the ad shit was getting big in the city. So I was doing 2 or 3 ads a day type thing, you know, and getting money. And I was in the union, and I would just go pick up a check and go, wow, this is kind of fun. This is easy. Then it became hard. It was like, oh, shit, now, you know, what's going on? And then, like I said, Les called, and then it became serious. I remember it was like, oh, shit, now I'm looking over, and there's Taylor Hawkins and Dave Grohl's about to watch me play. Oh, shit. You know, now I got to kick ass. Like, this isn't a joke, you know. I got to, like, be serious about this and join one thing, you know, and be a part of it.
Did your vision for what you want to do going forward change at all at that point? As far as, because, like, you didn't know, did you say, I want to be with Primus going forward? Or this is, like, I don't know if there was any sort of another eureka moment, like, hey, this is the life that I want. And this is the vision that I have going forward, the people I want to work with. I don't know if there was a grander thought, you know, going, not maybe at the beginning, but working with Primus and,
yeah.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yep, yeah, and that's funny that you said that, because the story that that, you know, I've told other people before, but it still sticks with me, is like when I was, at first it was just more like, oh shit, you know, Dave, like, I remember one of the shows when I first joined Primus, because Tim and I were friends, but Tim was known as the new Neil Peart. He was a very technical player. He was very, you know, he was more linear, you know, it was less of, he could groove, but it was more about the chops and more about, you know, he had a big, huge drum set. And when I joined Primus, we did the opposite. You know, I went in with like a Bonham kit and was about the groove, and it was just about hitting hard and keeping time. And so people had heard like, oh, Primus got a new drummer, because, you know, Les said he was getting calls from people all around the world. Oh, I play just like Tim. Can I join? You know, here's my videotape, and sending in tapes and shit. And, you know, check me out. But Les wanted to do a different thing. He had a different vision at that time. And what happened was with that, like I said, the Dave Grohls, the Taylor Hawkins, but I'll never forget, we were playing the Palladium, and I looked to my right, and there's Neil Peart. I looked to my left, and there's Danny from Tool.
Oh wow!
And I look behind, then I look behind me, and there's Stuart Copeland. And I'm like, holy shit! So yeah, the first couple years were just like, I gotta play in front of my heroes. Like, you know, like I'm, you know. Like another gig, Terry Bozzio was right behind me. And Les, even before my drum solo, said, well, Bryan, I don't know about tonight. Terry Bozzio's sitting behind you. Go. And I had to sing drum solo.
I love your Les Claypool impression.
Because so anyways, it was kind of that for the first couple of years. But what kind of got me into composing, and that's something that, we could talk about even after we talk about guns, was I'll never forget we were in some crazy country and, overseas or something, and we were on tour with Slayer. And the cases started coming down the ramp, as they were loading in, because we were getting to the, sometimes we'd get to the venues and we'd have to in the bus, and we didn't get a hotel. So we would stay there, and I would get catering in the morning or something. And I got up early one day and they were loading out the anvil cases, and the drum cases started coming out, and they were just beat up to a nub. They had every sticker from every country on there. They had they were just torn up. And I was like, holy shit, is this what happens if you just stay on the road for the rest of your life, and do this? So in that moment, I thought, okay, I want to grow old doing composing. I'm going to start getting into, taking piano lessons again, theory lessons, classical, I was taking chamber music lessons from someone, that kind of shit.
Sure.
I was just doing everything I could on the side while still doing shows with Ozzy, and, we were on that Black Sabbath tour. I think we were on that Ozfest at that point. And, and all my off hours, I was just trying to get into computers and music because that was where it was going and that kind of stuff. But I always thought, oh, no, I'm going to end this at one point and get into composing. That was my main goal after I saw what the road can do to you.
Then the answer to my question was yes. So that is cool to find that out, because I'm assuming composing never even occurred to you prior.
Not really, no. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've always was interested in it because I always loved movies and shit, and I would always listen to the music and see how it felt, and I was just an avid movie lover because my dad was. So we just watched. That was our kind of thing. Is we'd watch movies together and just talk about them and just and that was our bonding type of thing. So yeah, but. Yeah, it was crazy. At that point, that's what I decided. I was just like, oh, shit, I'm going to get into this.
Was it?
Awesome.
That is awesome. I know Art is a major Primus fan as well. Did you need to have a question to get in there?
I had a question. It's not relating to Primus, but to Tool and Danny Carey, but sort of relating to Brain more than Tool. I grew up loving Danny Carey's drumming. I saw him at the Baked Potato once, and he was just a monster in this small room of 50 people. And I remember talking to him about ancient geometry and all this weird shit that he used to kind of influence his sound. If it was the occult or if it was ancient sort of teachings of philosophy. I read somewhere that you were studying philosophy for a while, and you were thinking about maybe even going to academia and doing that. Did your studies of spirituality or philosophy at all influence your setup or your work or your drumming?
Well, I mean. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to. I mean, I know that Danny and they're way more into it. The old keyboardist in Guns N' Roses, Mother Goose, Chris Pittman. We were really good friends, and he took me to Danny's studio, and they have all that crazy geometry, Masonic temple shit on the wall and all this kind of stuff. And I never went that way with it, and I was just more into, I was a huge fan growing up of Bruce Lee, and, I know that he studied philosophy and was into it. And so I kind of just was always interested in that stuff. But, it was more of with Tony Williams, I think, he was the jazz, drummer that played with Miles, and, he was a huge influence on me because he played it like a rock drummer. He was kind of, how Jocko played the bass like a punk rock drummer. I mean, rock bass player for, the jazz fusion stuff that he did. Tony Williams, I always thought was the most powerful jazz drummer, and because he played it like Buddy Rich style, just balls out, just sweating his ass off, just kicking it. It wasn't a lounge type thing. It was way more deeper than that. And I was always a fan of his, and he was always into like numerology and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, I kind of say as far as my setup, I kind of was into that kind of shit for my setup, not really mentally, you know, like to do that kind of. But for my setup, I would, you know, definitely I copied Tony Williams on heights of stuff. Like, you know, my snare drum had to have 12 lugs. My floor toms were 10 inches off the ground. You know, I would measure everything to have a certain kind of a cool vibe and kind of that for the setup. But, you know, as far as playing, no, I look at playing as more like an athletic thing. You know, I try to just get in a zone, and I use more of the influence of like athletes. You know, how, you know, or Bruce Lee, just kind of being in the moment and trying to be, you know, trying to like just channel that side of myself when I'm playing.
Yeah, drummers are like you have to be an athlete. You almost have to be, right? You have to be like a very physical person on that kit. It's like even Danny Carey was like into basketball, and he almost looked like a basketball player behind a kit.
Exactly. It's funny you say that, because I would even I'd even hang out with him or see him, I go like, geez, he looks like he's came right off the court. You know, he's wearing shorts and basketball shoes, and he's an athlete though. I mean, if you ever watch him play, it's insane. Like you said, you have, and it's ridiculous. You know, it's like. It's an experience, like watching Michael Jordan or something, you know, when you watch him.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then let's go forward a little bit, because we mentioned him. What was your first experience meeting the man they call Buckethead?
Well, that's sort of a good segue into how I got in the band, because that's sort of how I got in the band, was through Bucky. But it was when I was in San Francisco, and the editor of Guitar Player, Joe Gore, was the guitar player for that band Big City. I was talking about that, asked me to play with them. And, you know, we were supposed to get signed, become this next huge band or whatever, but we kind of it just never really worked out. We had, I don't know, it was bad management, just bad it just didn't work out. So Joe Gore at that time was like a, you know, musicologist or whatever. I think he studied, or I think he was teaching at Berkeley at the time. But he just, you know, he knew he was kind of like my mentor as far as like different ethnic styles of music. And that band sort of was a hybrid of African beats with rock. And he basically just, you know, knew everything. So at that point, he became the editor of Guitar Player. So he called me one day and was just like, you have to meet this guitar player, because I got a tape of him and his friend sitting in his like bedroom on a videotape, just shredding and soloing, and just they sent it to, I think, Paul Schaefer, saying, you know, hey, you should get this guy in your band. You know,
Schaefer's band?
In the Tonight Show, or whatever it was. Yeah, that's what it was meant for. It was like Bucket was sitting there with his bucket on and his mask, and he was just shredding. I mean, just like crazy. And, you know, Joe Gore was like, hey, man, I think you would be perfect to play with this guy. I really think you guys would get along. You want to meet him? And so, you know, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So Bucket, you know, I think he was living in Claremont at that time, or somewhere down south. So he came up, and, you know, he was just this really shy, really sweet dude that was just a shredder. And right away, he was into, like, he talked about basketball and Jordan. He was into Bruce Lee, and, you know, and we just kind of got along. We just kind of hit it off, and we kind of became friends. And we didn't really do too much, you know, playing at that point. We would just kind of hang out. And at that point, I had already made an album with this band called the Limbo Maniacs. That was a childhood friend band from that guy that I saw playing the quad, Merv, who was playing Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent, all that shit, Robin Trower. And he was in this, we made a childhood band. We got signed. We called it the Limbo Maniacs, and we got signed on Relativity. records. And so we always loved Bill Laswell because of the cross, he was doing these crossover things. And I really loved that Pill album that he did, the one where Steve Vai plays on it, Tony Williams plays on it, Ginger Baker plays on it.
Oh, wow.
And, it was that, it's the generic Pill album. It just says P-I-L. That was like one of my favorite albums. So we really wanted this guy to produce us. And so he did. So we became kind of friends. And he had called and said, hey, I want to put a band together with some of the Funkadelic guys. And I said, well, you got to see this guitar player. And I gave him the videotape of him saying, and his friend going, hey, Paul, you got to get this guy in your band. That guy you have sucks. And then Bucket would just shred, and all that. And so that's sort of how Bucket and we made Praxis with Bill Laswell. And that was, with Bernie Worrell, Bootsy Collins. It was me, and then from the Jungle Brothers, it was Ass Man Flip and this guy named Torture. And he put this band called Praxis together, and we went to New York, went to Brooklyn. We recorded it there. And then, Bucket and I just kind of became friends. And then that kind of segued into when we did the Ozfest with Primus. Since I was friends with Bucket, Les had met Bucket and was like, we should take Bucket on tour with us and just kind of come out as a solo guest on the Ozfest. And then that's when Ozzy wanted Bucket, because Ozzy saw Bucket play with us and was like, shit, this is my new guy.
Wow.
But that didn't work out because I guess something to do with he wanted Bucket to take off his bucket. And Bucket was like, this is my look, I'm not going to just, this is what I do type thing. And so that didn't kind of work out, I guess. And then at that point, he had known Josh Freese from, I think, just being up in L.A. and just, I forgot how he knew Josh. But Josh, at that point, was in Guns N' Roses. We had all heard, because we had done some shows, we were doing shows. I think we did an award show up here in San Francisco. And I remember Josh was there. And I think he was playing with Devo maybe at that point, or I don't know if he was playing with anybody. He just might have been there. And I had kind of met Josh through, some people or whatever to also, in passing, didn't really know him that well and or whatever, but we were doing this award show and Bucket was sitting in with us and Bucket knew him. But I was remember seeing Josh at the table and everybody around town was like, oh shit, he got the Guns N' Roses gig. And it was like, oh man, that's the heaviest gig you can ever get. The Guns N' Roses, that's so, and I remember going up to him like, dude, well, shit, you're like the heavy, man. You got the Guns gig. And he was like, oh, I can't talk about it, because that was like, he signed an NDA and he couldn't talk about anything and what was going on. And so after that, I remember we were just doing a random tour with Primus. It was for the Rhinoplasty album or something. And Josh had called Bucket and said, hey, dude, I think you should try out for Guns. And Bucket was like, oh, okay, and then I guess he had met, he went and met with Axl, hung out, did some stuff with them, and Axl was, saying he wanted to change the sound more a different sound and do some different shit, and Bucket was super into it, and Bucket was just like, man, this is rad, it's so crazy, he's so rad, and it's just all this gone, it could be really cool. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, and Josh is a great drummer. It's going to be good for you type of thing. We were on tour, and so he went off and was doing that for a little bit. And then I went on tour with Primus in Australia. We were doing a little Australian tour, and I had called Bucket just to see how he was doing. And he was like, dude, Josh just quit. you should play in this. And I was like, you mean in Guns? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, that's kind of heavy. Okay. So it was kind of like he was trying to push me into that thing, and I guess telling Axl, and he gave Axl some tapes or something or whatever, because I think Axl had already seen me play. And he knew Primus was kind of like a musicians band, so I think he knew I could play the drums. But so he was kind of interested in it. And so I was like, okay, well, when I get off this tour, like maybe I'll check it out. And then I got home, and then like 3 or 4 months went by, didn't hear anything. And then, I got a call. I think it was from Tommy Stinson or whatever, and he was like, hey man, we need a drummer. What are you doing? And I was like, and he was just like, everybody wants this gig. Kenny Aronoff's knocking on the door, but, Buckethead says we should check you out. Like, who the fuck are you? Because Tommy was that kind of punk rock, attitude thing. And then he found out I played with Tom Waits, and he loved Tom Waits. So then he started being cooler to me. He was kind of like, and, since then we're friends and everything. I love Tommy and whatever. But I remember at first he was just like, okay, who the fuck are you? You're going to come down and check this out? What are you doing? Like that kind of a thing. And so I was like, well, yeah, I'll come and check it out, but I don't know if I want to jam on Sweet Child of Mine and, and those kind of things. I'm not going to come down to audition. And, they were kind of taken back, and they were like, well, what do you mean? Like, this is like, like Guns N' Roses, dude, and I was like, well, that's cool and everything, but I don't know. I just don't, okay. What, I'm going to come and just jam, these songs? I know them, whatever. Who cares? I wasn't trying to be a dick, but I was really like, well, I could go either way. I didn't really care at that point. I was getting kind of burned out on playing anyways, because I had just been on tour, and I was just, I don't know, I thought maybe I was better than I was or something. I don't know. So I just kind of blew it off in a way. And then they called and said, why don't you come down to the studio and just play on some tracks, some of the tracks that we have, and we'll just check you out. So, I got a call from the manager, and they gave me like a first-class ticket from San Francisco to L.A., and am I talking too much? I feel like I'm talking. But
no, I'm loving all of this.
This is great. No,
yeah, you're a great guest so far. So far.
All right, well, right on. I just don't want to feel like because it's a funny story, but it's kind of like, I'm
hanging on every word, my friend.
Well, they called me up. The management called me up and was like, dude, this is Guns N' Roses, and we're gonna get you first-class ticket from here to L.A. They got like a car to pick me up, like one of those S550 something, Mercedes, and black car, and drove me to the airport. They picked me up in an air, from the LAX from that. No, I think we flew into Burbank because we were at Rumbo at that point, and that was in the Valley. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, so they picked me up. I go to the studio. There's Robin, who I'd never met, from Nine Inch Nails. He's sitting there, and Bucket wasn't there yet, I don't think. And so the first person I met, I remember meeting Robin with his crazy hair. And I'd seen him in Nine Inch Nails, but I didn't, he just had like his whole head was shaved except his sideburns. So he had these long, like, Amish sideburn type eyes. And I was like, oh shit, this is getting weird. This is kind of crazy. And then I met the producer, Sean Bevan, who was really cool. And then Roy Thomas Baker wasn't there yet, I don't think. Yeah, I think it was still Sean Bevan. And so, I go into Rumbo, and, they asked me to, they had some tracks set up, and they were playing, I was playing, and doing my thing, and Chris Pittman was there. Then he showed up. And then I think Tommy showed up, because they all came to say, like, okay, who is this brain guy that Bucket keeps talking about? So I was kind of put on the spot. And then it got heavy, because all of a sudden I'm like playing on one of the tracks, and I look over, and it's fucking Axl sitting in the control room. And I was like, oh shit, like there's Axl, like this is real now. Like, holy shit, and I kind of froze up. you know, and I was like, oh, I didn't know what to do. And then they're like, hey, man, you know, come in. I was like, okay. And I knew that it was because Axl wanted to meet me. And, you know, he was super cool, but that's when I knew the shit was real because, you know, he kind of has a presence of like, you know, you're just like, well, shit, now it's real. Like I was talking shit before because, you know, I wasn't really talking to the man, but now I'm talking to the man. Like here he is.
Sure.
And, you know, and he just was asking me what I've been doing and stuff. And he was super cool. He even said to me, I'll never forget, he goes, yeah, dude, you know, hey, if you want this gig, you can have it, and you can still play in Primus or Tom Waits or whatever you want to do. It's just, you know, you got to let us know, and we're first. And I was like, this is the fucking coolest guy ever. Like, you know, I get to fucking do that, and then do, you know, and then I was like, all right, let's do this, you know. And then we started rehearsing for that first Rock in Rio gig.
Okay. Do you remember the song though? The before we get to Rio, what was the song that you played for him? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was that. Oh shit! Well, I don't know if it ever made it on Chinese. I'm kind of embarrassed that I can't even remember what the if it was on Chinese. But it was a song Mother Goose had written, and it was kind of a punk rock song. I forgot what the title of it at that point was. I don't think it was the working title. It was just the one that what they were calling it while we were doing it. But it was definitely something that was supposed to be on Chinese.
And it wasn't like the blues, which they changed to Street of Dreams. It wasn't anything like that. It was okay. It wasn't the blues. It was a fast punk rock. Interesting. Type of feel one. It might have been It might have been Prostitute. That might have been an early version of it because that's not a fast song.
Yeah, but I remember the name Prostitute was up, and I did a couple. I did like 3, but the one that I kind of choked on when Axl walked in was the fast punk rock one. If I remember what it is, I'll
send me an email.
I have a question. So I mean,
go ahead, Art.
Hey, Bryan. Sorry, just started to jump in. I'm wondering, like, so you get a call, you're in the airport, you're going to play for Guns N' Roses. Obviously, like, it didn't feel, like, fully real until you saw Axl Rose, the man, in the studio. But did you sort of prepare by listening to any sort of material, past GNR drummers? Were you sort of trying to get into the zone of being a Guns N' Roses drummer? Or did you just go there saying, I'm going to give them me, if they like me, great? Or were you trying to kind of customize your approach to GNR?
Well, no, dude, it was hilarious because I think because it was so big, I just didn't let it sink in. Like I said, these were the steps building up to, like when I saw Axl, then I thought, oh shit, that's the dude that I'd watch on TV with a feather boa, like, screaming and throwing the mic down. And, you know, that's why I was into him. I was into that he's a Ghana. And, you know, that the shit was crazy. Because I was always into, you know, Chaos, Killer Chaos Never Died vibe, you know, in Burroughs or whatever. You know, I was just always, like, into the whole thing, you know, the mystique of it and everything. So when I saw him, I was like, oh, shit, you know, with his rings and shit. I was like, okay, here, the heavy's here. Like, okay, this is where it gets deep. And then, so it started catching up then. So, no, dude, I didn't have any preparation. I just kind of showed up like, oh, whatever, you know, didn't rehearse, didn't know one gun song, nothing.
Amazing.
And that's why it started getting funny because after he told me that, he kind of just said, okay, you're the guy. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's when the shit started going, okay, now it's like talking to management. Okay, we're rehearsing at center staging. You know, get all your gear here. We're starting this, you know, 3 months of rehearsing before we go play our first show in Rock in Rio and that kind of shit. And that's when I started going, oh, shit. So I call my tech. He brings this drum set. And it's kind of my Primus Fusion kit. And, you know, we're setting up. And I'll never forget. I go to the first rehearsal. Tommy Stinson walks in, and I have my mic stand. And it's like, not my mic stand, I mean my cymbal stand. And it's kind of set up kind of like Neil Peart-ish with the, like, you know, like a giraffe. It's got the boom stand with and it's kind of sticking out. And Tommy walks in and he takes off his coat and he just puts it on the boom stand. And I'm like, fucking dick. You know, like, oh, okay, you fucking dick. You know, and so I was like, so we started playing, and we were just more jamming, because I didn't really know the songs yet. And, you know, and so, you know, we started playing the songs and doing the shit. And then I remember, I'll never forget it. All of a sudden, it's like the bat phone rings. And it's kind of like, Tommy, you know, there's a phone call for you. And I knew it was Axl. And I heard, I can kind of see Tommy looking over or whatever and talking. You know, it was kind of like, I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I can, you know, I was just kind of like vibing the whole thing. And basically, everything's here, but he doesn't know any of the songs. And I don't know what the fuck's going on, dude. Who is this guy? Like, that type of thing. So Tommy was like, he's like, dude, like, you know, what's your, like, your setup? So, like, you know, and you don't know any of the songs? Like, dude, you got to get your shit together, or I'm just going to tell him, you know, you can't pull this or whatever. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. I go, dude, give me 2 days. I'll be back in 2 days. Just give me fucking 2 days. So I tell my tech, look, I want a bottom type setup. I get this now. No fucking boom stands, no. And that's when I started doing what you're asking. You know, I started getting my shit together. I learned every fucking song that they wanted me to learn. I sat there for night and day with headphones and a pad at the fucking hotel and learned every break, everything. Had my tech bring a whole different kit. We showed up. This time Tommy couldn't put his fucking coat on my cymbal stand because it was a smooth, like, bottom straight stand. I fucking just, you know, first song, I just went as hard as I could, just went crazy. You know, I knocked over like 2 cymbals. I just hit every drum like I was going to kill somebody. And Tommy just looked at me and was like, you got the gig. Let's go get a drink.
That is badass.
So now the shit's serious. I get it. There's no more fucking around. Like, he can, you know what I mean? And we remember we went out and had a couple drinks and just kind of hung out. And he was just like, right on, you know. And I was like, cool. You know, and then I had to start, you know, getting my shit together and really learning them even better, you know, and stuff like that. And that's when I was talking about earlier, where you're asking me, do I refine myself? You know, do I think about it and make a setup for it? And, you know, and yeah, I do. Like, in that particular thing, I was like, okay, I get who I got to become now. And then I really listened to the songs, especially Appetite. And I was like, shit, this is orchestrated shit. Like, this is, like, you know, this is good, like, shit, the way it's moving and the way the drummer moves with everything. It's not just like, okay, somebody play one groove and you're just going to jerk off over it, you know, solo. It's like, there's parts and there's things, you know what I mean? So, right. You know, and I remember I always had trouble with Out to Get Me or whatever. Is that the name of that song or whatever? It's like, because it had so many different parts, I was like, you know, and so I don't know. And then from then on, I took it serious and was like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, it's a different game now.
I know, Art, you have a question, but before that, I just want to say I relate to Brain, at least how I'm perceiving it, where there's a certain, I'm only going to relate this to you. I don't want to say like a procrastination, at least for me. And I'm smart enough and talented enough to get away with a certain amount, but there are times, whether it be in radio or school, where I get yelled at, like, you can do more, you could do better, and I'm like, oh my God, holy shit, I got to get my act together, otherwise I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to get failed this class, or something's going to happen. And then I was like, something clicks. So that's what, it just reminded me a little bit of my personality, especially since the beginning, where, you know, like, hey, I could do this, I could do that, and you just have the natural ability to be talented and do this, but there's a certain point where, holy shit, I gotta be better than I even am. Yep.
And it wasn't till, and then, you know, and then it even got scarier, because that's when it went to that next level where I really started listening to the album and the intricacies, and I started kind of going, oh shit, okay, no wonder they're huge. You know what I mean? It's like, I was like, you know, these are fucking great songs, and, you know, and they're timeless, you know. So I was just kind of like, you know, so because Primus is even kind of like, you know, I mean, there's some of that shit that Les did on Suck on This and all the first stuff was pretty orchestrated and pretty, like there was parts and stuff like that. But a lot of it was like, it was like you can kind of let loose within it. This, it was like, well, you got to let loose because you want that kind of feel that Adler had. But you also got to play the right thing because the fans know. They're not just going, okay, they got Brain in the band now, so we want to see, they could give a shit. As long as Axl's and Slash are there, and Duff, I guess. I mean, does it really matter? But so you got to play it right. It's like, no, they want to hear the feel the way it was done on the album. And they'd like to hear the feel, the way it's done on the album because that's the way they grew up listening to it or are still listening to it. So those were the things that I was trying to cop. The challenge became like, damn, he's like rushing the verse, but he's laying back the chorus instead of the opposite, where people, like Stuart Copeland rushes the chorus. And, oh, shit, he's laying the snare back, just a little, 20 milliseconds, behind the kick. And the hi-hat's pushing on this one, and it's stiff. He's not playing like eighth notes that's accented a certain way. They're all accented the same. And, those were the things I started writing down in my head. And, because I was schooled so I could see music going by as I'm playing, I started like concentrating on. I was like, okay, the goal here now is to kind of recreate what he did because, there's maybe 5 fans out in the audience that give a shit about me, but they want to hear that they're drinking and want to hear the song the way it was on the album. So that became the challenge. I started thinking like, okay, I want to play it exactly how he played it, especially like on, the first album. Matt Sorum's more of a metronome, so his stuff was easier because, I can do You Could Be Mine, and it was like a drum machine, it was a straight, and his groove was straight, and it sounded like they even played it to a click. But
I've heard that. It's awesome to hear that from another drummer. I always hear that about Matt Sorum. He's a drum machine.
Yeah, so it was easier for me because that's how I was brought up. I was brought up on the click, schooled, practice to the drum click and that kind of stuff. So his songs were easier to play, but the intricacies of like, and the way the beats were played on Appetite, way different, especially, like it was so hard for me to get the feel of like Sweet Child of Mine. I'm sure I don't even think I still have it right. Huh. It seems like the easiest beat, but and it is an easy beat if you just want to play it and be generic. But to give it the swing and the flavor that it has on the album is the hard shit. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that made it interesting to me because I was like, well, this was what makes it great. These are the things that make it great. And especially seeing it now with Slash and Duff, I mean, I'm just like, okay, I get it. Slash is great for a reason. Like he gives it the thing. Now it's real.
Absolutely.
You sort of already, Bryan, you already sort of went over it, but what I was wondering is, on that first record, like it almost felt like the drumming was never repetitive in the sense that he never played the same thing twice. It was sort of sloppy, but in a way it added to the appeal of it. Was there a specific track though out of all those epic songs that you were like, man, this is the funnest song for me to play? Like the one that you actually felt like you could kind of have the most fun with?
I mean, Rocket Queen, probably. I love the ending and all that stuff. That was my favorite one.
That's cool.
And it kind of had a funk groove, or whatever. But I think that you're absolutely right, dude, on how you're describing the way that first album. It's like, it feels like it's the same, but it's not. Where on the Illusion album, like, Matt Sorum, it is kind of the same. And it's great playing and it's solid, but it's just a different feel. And it's easier for me to do that because that's naturally, I could pick up on it and do it where, Steve, I guess with Adler, he's just playing who he is. It's like Zeppelin or something. You know what I mean? I mean, like, yeah, I could call it Bill, but it'll never be the same as Bonham because I guess I'm not a fucking badass drinker that has a cool car, you know.
All those various GNR drummers brought something very unique to the band. Like, I mean, Adler and then Sorum and then I guess Josh to some extent on Chinese and this recording season. Because that team recorded like 80% of the record before you sort of brought your changes to it all. Was there something that you felt like, and I know it's hard to talk about your own drumming in sort of a way where it doesn't feel awkward, but was there something that you think you brought to GNR that was different and unique, sort of your trademark that's left in sort of the songs and the live performances that you were part of?
Well, it was funny because, like with Chinese, at first, you know, Josh is a very linear drummer also. You know, he's probably like the best, you know, I can't think of a better drummer than Josh Freese. I mean, he's one of my favorite drummers. And, but he's technical. You know, he's very technical and perfect. I mean, you know, with the 9 Inch Nails shit, I love watching those rehearsals on YouTube. You know, because he's playing with the click and the machine, and it's like perfect. You can't tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess that's how Sorum is a little bit. I guess, you know, I don't know. I don't know if Matt's playing that much except for that stuff. Josh, I've followed for years, and I just, you know, still talk to him, and I feel like he's, you know, and I've seen him with Sting and Devo. He's awesome, you know, or whatever, but. When I first joined, I'd say about 80% was done. And Axl was like, well, I want to see what you can do to these things. And so, you know, and it's a story I've told before in print. I don't know if I've said it in a podcast, but, you know, it was like, well, dude, at first he was like, I like Josh's parts in playing. And then I was like, well, what do you want me to redo them? You know, like what's this thing? And Axl's like, I'll tell you a story about what happened in a second, and it just blew me out. But before it, you know, Axl was like, well, I want to see what you can do, but with Josh's parts. And I was like, well, wait, so you want me to play his part, but with just, you know, but I'm playing it, replaying it. He's like, yeah. So, you know, so I went to like Sony Music because I was like, dude, I can transcribe this, but that's like a full-time job to transcribe all this stuff. So I went to like the orchestrator at Sony Music, and I remember dropping off a bag of CDs and just saying, can you orchestrate all this stuff, write out all the drum stuff, even the crazy solo at the end of what's this? Sorry, man. I'm drawing a blank on the songs on Chinese. But there's that whole crazy solo it's not solo, but it's kind of like a very, you know, it's like a drum part at the end of. Oh man, I can't remember the name. Maybe you guys will.
Is it Better by any chance?
I'm going through
No, not Better.
It's not Prostitute because I'm thinking about the way that ends.
No, it's not that part. It's the end of.
I can go through the whole track. Shackler's Revenge, IRS, Riyadh, Sorry.
No, it's not Riyadh. Is that all of them?
Madagascar?
No, it's at the end of like, fuck, man. It's the world. It's the world.
Maybe that's a great tune.
Yeah, I think it might be at the end of that. But, anyways, which is crazy. So the guy transcribes all of it, right? And he gives them back, and I literally had like a huge, you know, like literally like a 6-foot chart above my head that I just learned to play all the parts. You know what I mean? Like literally note for note. I did it. And I was like, redid it in my feel. Because my feel, that what I think I give to it is a little different feel. It's a little more of a swing to the whole thing. So I think that's where Axl was like, okay, I like Josh's parts, but I like the way you feel with his parts. So that's where I was like, you know, because Axl is, I mean, his ear is ridiculous. I mean, I'll never forget, here I go again, probably forgetting what song it was. Because, you know, I mean, dude, I did that album for like 6 years. After a while, every song and every title became the same.
Oh, and you've done so much. I mean, I can go through the track listing again if you want. Scraped, There Was a Time, This I Love, more songs you played on.
Oh, wait, There Was a Time, I think, is the one that has the ending. Is that the one? That's not the piano one, or is that the piano one with Axl so by himself? There Was a Time.
No, that was,
The
piano was either This I Love and Street of Dreams.
Right,
There Was a Time
right. There Was a Time. There Was a Time is the one that has the crazy drum thing at the end.
See, I just remember for that, and it relates to you and Bucket, that despite loving everything GNR's done, that, especially with Slash, the solo that Bucket does on There Was a Time might be my favorite all-time solo. I mean, it's insane. So whenever I think of that song, I think of that solo.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, and that's the. But I thought Bucket played great on all the shit. It's weird. I have a love-hate relationship with that album. When people ask me, do I like it? Yeah, I like it, but there was. Some of the process was pretty hard, doing it, because Axl wanted it to be so great that, we had to keep pushing it and pushing the boundaries. And, and he would just, and that was my story about, like, on the chart, which he never saw the charts, on one of the songs, there was, like, I remember recording the whole song with Roy Thomas Baker, maybe spending 3 days on this song until we got the perfect take, because, I had to play everything that Josh played exactly how he played it. And we finally got it. But I remember when we were listening to the playback, and this was like at 2 a.m. or something, I go, oh, shit. I was looking at the chart. I go, dude, I missed this one kick drum right at the beginning of the verse. And we listened back and we were like, yeah, but you hit the cymbal and you hit everything, and then you kind of come in there. It's, let's just send it to him and check it. We send it to him. He gets it around 4 o'clock in the morning. We get the call, and it was literally, yeah, I like it, but I think Bryan forgot to hit a kick drum at the beginning of the, like, he doesn't miss it. I was like, holy shit, again, it's like, this gig is taking me out. Like, is not fucking around. You can't get away with shit. Dude, it was so, and it was like, this like lightest kick too. It was like, 3 fucking P's on the fucking quarter note. It was like, just tap it. Just little tap. And I was like, I just forgot to tap it. It was like, yeah, but Bryan forgot to hit that. I was like, uh-oh. This is some serious shit. Like, he knows his shit. He's listening. Not like we're just sending it up there for no reason and shit,
I mean, that's
pretty crazy.
So when that stuff would happen, would you? I mean, I want to ask it in a way that's. Did you like that kind of management? I guess a little bit within the band, because again, you having to get your shit together. You weren't sure at the beginning. Did it make you up your game as a drummer? I mean, did you have a reaction? I guess from, because I'll relate it to me. When I've been on classic rock stations, and if I slip up a certain word, I'm not talking like saying fuck by accident, but like mispronouncing something, or maybe said a joke that missed. Having my program director hotline me right away. And sometimes if they were a jerk program director, that would piss me off and throw me off my game. And sometimes I would appreciate it. Be like, you know what? My next break's going to be even better. Now I appreciate the immediate feedback. Oh yeah.
I respected the game that, the Guns N' Roses game, if you want to call it that. I was like, oh shit, I see. Like, you don't get here by fucking around. And I was like, not that I was fucking around, but I was like, okay, the attention to detail with Tommy kind of pushing me and saying, like, dude, come on. Like, this is the real thing, dude. But I think it was my insecurities of myself. That was the way I can kind of, like, be like, that. My way of blowing it off is, this is no big deal. It's just Guns N' Roses. Who gives a shit? I'm just going to go up and bring in a fusion. You know what I mean? That was my way, I think, of just dealing with it in general. Just if we want to get serious for a second about, you know what I mean? I was like, I think that was my way of just hiding that I was actually scared. Like, I was like, whoa, I was on floor 9. Now I'm on floor 11.
No,
Like,
that makes sense. Like how I'll make a joke as a defense mechanism. That doesn't mean like I think everything is funny, but I'll either be nervous or uncomfortable. So that makes total sense.
Yeah. So I think that's where I knew I had to go, and then, and it pushed me, and I just didn't, I'd never seen, so, even now, like the last gig I saw, and it was like, I think they played for 3 hours and 40 minutes. And then, literally when I went backstage to say what's up to Axl, he was like, yeah, man, I think that was our longest gig. Well, it was 3 hours, 40 minutes. I'm going to go for 3:45 next tomorrow.
Wow.
And I was like, you're fucking 3 hours and 45 fucking, I was like, he's heavy. I was like, okay. I was like, he's constantly pushing, constantly testing, it's rad. And I like that,
That is rad. So to go back just a couple steps, what was that first gig like? Because we got a lot of questions for you once we said we were going to announce you from our listeners. And so one of them wanted to know what that first gig in Rock in Rio was like for you.
Well, it was one, I think, similar to what I heard, I think Matt Sorum's experience was when I read a couple things on Axl had never sung with us for those 3.5 months of rehearsing.
Okay.
I think he showed up once and just kind of, said a couple lines, and I think he was just like, that's enough, or whatever. And then, I heard it's different now. But there it was like, yeah, man. It was like, okay, here we are, Rock in Rio. There's like 250,000 people out there. I had hung out with Axl a little bit, in the studio, talked to him, maybe 2 or 3 times during that 3.5 months of rehearsing, short conversations, nothing serious. So it's like, here we are about to play our first show, the biggest show, and I had never heard him sing with the band ever. So it was like half the shit, was like, I was like, I have to get cued on this. I wonder how he's going to cue it. So I was nervous, man, probably more nervous than I've ever been. Remember that night at 4 a.m, just fucking punching the pillow, trying to go to sleep. I wish there was I had Xanax then, because I probably would have popped one. So, I was nervous. I was like, shit. We get there, he's not with us. So we're sitting back there, and, I'm talking to Diz and just going like, dude, fuck, I'm nervous, dude. And he's like, oh, yeah, so am I, I go, yeah, this is crazy. Like, even where's Axl? Like, he's not even there. He's on a helicopter coming in. It's just you're just like, okay, of course, And then, we get up on, as, we're walking up, there again, I see Taylor Hawkins because they were opening earlier, I guess, or whatever, and he's like, what's up, dude? You gonna go play? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking nervous, that kind of a thing. They're all watching, we get up there, and, soon as you hear his voice, everything went away. I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I'm in it. I get it. It works now. I hear it. Because before then, you just didn't know. You know what I mean? You're just like, you're hearing nobody sung the lyrics as we were rehearsing. It was just all, like in my head. I just hear Welcome to the Jungle as we're playing the part and the verse and, and that part and whatever. And I remember I only fucked up one thing. I think it's even on the Rock in Rio video. It's on You Could Be Mine, the build-up after I do the and it goes that part. I fucked it up. I didn't fuck it up. I'm going to say this, and I guess if he hears it, I don't know, maybe he'll never talk to me again. But I didn't fuck it up. It was just he didn't come in right on the way we rehearsed it, because I think he just, maybe live he does it a different way, but it was never discussed because no one discussed it. So I came in wrong, and I'll never forget the fucking look he gave me. He turned around and he just looked at me, like gave me the fucking evil eye. And I was just like, dude, I just am doing it how we rehearsed it. You're the one who fucked it up. Like, that's what I was thinking on stage, but I was just like, oh my God, I fucked it up. And he just looked at me like, you fucking dick, like that. It was funny. Anyways, yeah, so that was sort of my first experience. I mean, it was pretty trippy not to hear any lyric, and be headlining the show and to play for I think we played for about 2 hours then, 2.5. It wasn't the 3.5 hours they're doing now or whatever.
Did you lean on Bucket then, as since you guys were friends, as far as I guess during the whole 3 months of practicing, as far as where is he? Is this how things go?
Well, no one knew. I mean, we were all doing it. This is all the first time. Before then, Bucket was just hanging out in the studio writing with them. It was like Bucket's week or 2 weeks to come in and play on some of the songs that had been recorded already. So when I was out with Primus, Bucket was, I think, just doing that stuff. Nobody had started rehearsals until I came in with Tommy that one time, and then we started it. So this was new to everybody.
Oh, wow, okay.
Nobody knew he wasn't ever going to show up, except Diz, because Diz has been through both things. He was through the very first time and then this time. And the Matt Storm era, too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he kind of knew. So everybody would kind of look to Diz and just be like, so really, this is how it goes? And he's like, yeah, whatever. He'd drink his Jägermeister or eat his Power Bar and be like, yeah, what do you mean? Be like, shit,
That's too funny, man. That is too
funny. Did you and Buckethead ever sort of have a night together, or have a off, outside the studio conversation, or break down some of the songs together and kind of find out different ways to change them, or have a conversation about any of the tracks and your sort of unique changes you guys? Because I feel like you guys were creative partners and had a unique language you could talk to each other with. Did you kind of ever did you two ever sort of step aside and do your own thing and try to figure out what you can do to these songs and change them or anything?
Yeah, I mean, we did because, we were writing together for the album. We did Shacklers and I'm Sorry. So as far as the album, yeah, we were really working hard as trying to write some new songs, do some different stuff. As far as the live stuff, not really, because I kind of had my own way of approaching it, and he was dealing with the two other guitar players. I think Paul Tobias was the first one that was there.
Sure.
So he was dealing with Paul at first, and then, Axl got rid of Paul, and then we got Richard because he was Tommy's friend. And, then he was dealing with them and Robin. So he was kind of had to be, I think that was tough for Bucket because Bucket, is his own thing. Obviously, he's doing his own thing now, and he's got his own thing. And he can play in front of 1,000 people every night just solo, with an iPod, and he just solos because he's so talented, And I think the other guys, it was hard for him because, it's like, I don't even think he likes guitar players, really. You know what I mean? In that sense. I think he does it because he's great at it, and he likes to, but he doesn't, talk to other guitar players. He just does his own thing. So I think that was the hard part about it, because it was like, oh, now you have to sit there with other guitar players and learn parts. And, okay, why don't you play this part, and then he'll play that part, and then you'll do this. I think it was hard for him.
So the songwriting process was difficult. Was it difficult for you then with Guns? Because if it's
no, because I'm the only I'm the drummer, and there was no other drummer, and I think that it was easier because I was just like, okay, I know what I have to do, and everybody's counting on me to hold the time down, and that's my job. So you know what I mean? But for Bucket, it was like, maybe he wanted to play this other part, and he was realizing that, oh, I get it, Richard wants to play that, and he's a nice guy, and he doesn't want to step on any toes, so he's not going to fight for it. And then it's like, what, now we're fighting for parts? And it's just like, it's stupid. You know what I mean? Where now it's like easy because it's like, well, hey, Richard, you're just going to play this because I'm fucking Slash. I'm going to play, this is my part, or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's easier, but there it's weird. It's like you have three people kind of competing.
Because it was a new thing.
Yeah. And no one knew what was happening, really, because it was kind of like, okay, there's three guitar players, and they're all new, and they've never met each other before, and now we got to all work together. Plus, you got to play, I want to play this, and who gets to play the beginning of Sweet Child,
Then
That's the funniest part of me, so.
Then what was the awareness of the actual Chinese record? Because there was obviously a major chunk of time where Guns N' Roses fans like me and Art are just craving anything. Going on my GNR forum, and forgive me, I actually found my original Napster leaks of Chinese Democracy. Sorry, I did buy the record after the fact, and the vinyl. So you have my money. I guess I'm wondering, did you know the controversy or maybe the jokes that like this is never going to come out? Did that bother you, or you were just like, I'm in it, I know what's going on, I'm going to do my thing?
Yeah, I didn't know. Because in that time we were in a bubble. We were just there at the Village, and we were in our own little bubble. The only person that would come and listen to the album was Jimmy Iovine. That's the only person I think Axl would talk to about it or whatever. So it was just kind of, we were in our own little bubble. And I mean, I guess towards the end, it started to get a little ridiculous because, that's when when I came out of the recording and I just started like hanging out again. And I think what happened was I did the recording, and then Tom Waits asked me to play on that Real Gone album. And so I went back up north for about 3 months and recorded with Tom, and then Guns wasn't doing anything. And then Tom said, do you want to go on tour? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go on tour. And that's when we were in Europe a lot with Tom. And a lot of those fans, they're fanatical. They would come to the show and they would know that I was in Guns, and they would kind of like, be like, what the hell is going on? Like, you guys, and I started to think like, what is going on? This is ridiculous, but when I was there recording, no, I was just like, oh shit, this is a big thing. This is kind of rad. It's like, this shit has to be killer. Like, because I'll never forget, we were at the Village and we were in the front, the main room where they did, I think, Rumors. So it was like Studio A, I think it was. And it was in the it was their big room, I guess. And, we were setting up the drums, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. I go, dude, this is Guns N' Roses. Like I said to everybody, and I was just like, dude, we can't just record here. Like, we got to fucking, we got to do something rad or whatever. And I remember the studio owner, Jeff Greenberg, who became good friends. But, he brought me into his office, and he's like, what's up? Do you need a new tech? Do you need new drums or whatever? I'm like, no, dude, we need to record in a rad place. I mean, this is Guns N' Roses. Really? I'm just going to record where every other Joe Schmo sets up? He's like, well, hold on. There's an auditorium upstairs that was an old Masonic theater. And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, well, you want to check it out? I'm like, that sounds better. And so we walked up there. He opened the door, and it was like a mausoleum or something. It just like creaked open, and it was just shit everywhere. And it was just this, really cool auditorium. And I was like, dude, this is where the drums are going to be set up. He was like, all right. And then they ran cables up, and they cleaned it out, and they built Bucket a chicken coop. And, I was like, now we're recording. This is Guns N' Roses. This is cool now, And, he took pictures, and it became kind of a famous thing that they built Bucket a chicken coop, to do his guitar stuff. And they did. And then my drums are set up in this auditorium, and they just ran cables up there and had TVs and shit for us to talk back and forth and stuff like that. And
that's actually that reminds me. I think that's what I heard about Bucket trying out for Ozzy, and that's what it was. It was the chicken coop that Ozzy didn't want to have, but Axl was cool with it.
Probably.
I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what's rad about it. I think he loves it when it's rad. He wants it to be rad too. So he didn't say don't do it. He was like, because in the end, everything goes to him. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like he's the end. He's the last, dude that you have to go through. So they probably just said, I don't know. Sounds good to me. Why not record up there? Sounds good. Does it sound good? And it was like, yeah, it sounds amazing. It's like, okay. Because really down in Studio A is cool. It's great. But I was just like, dude, it's gotta be better than this. You know what I mean? Like, anybody comes here and records. Where is somebody not recorded in this building? You know, so it was just kind of like, oh, okay, now we got something going. So I think that's what I loved about it, was that it was just on that level of what I love about, like Axl, even like this last time I saw him, and he was saying that he wants to, play 3 hours and 45 minutes on the next show. It's like it's just he's going, man. He's not stopping. I mean, it's pretty rad.
Bryan, I was going to ask you, in your involvement on Chinese or in GNR in general, just over the years, what is the one thing as a musician that you're the most proud of? Like the one thing you want people to remember, or that you were really sort of proud of that you might not have talked about before?
As far as a drummer on albums, and is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the drummer, and just as a musician, just being part of like rock and roll history or one of the greatest bands in history, and just like your sort of like, your legacies. Like, what's the one thing you're like, man, that's fucking awesome. I got to do that, and that to me, I'm really proud of that.
Well, I guess it goes back to what you said about the versatility. Was it better? I think that's what I'm proud of, is that people could say that, oh, shit, yeah, he played with Tom Waits and made that Real Gone album, and shit, that was badass. Oh, and he played on Chinese Democracy, and that was badass. And, oh, he was on that Primus, the Brown album, and that was a sick sound, and that was pretty cool. That was rad, too. It was like, I guess, in the end, I'm proud that I didn't stick with one thing, and kind of just went with my heart when I kind of felt like things were burning out for me and I couldn't give it 110%. I felt like, well, maybe it's time to move on. Now, financially, as I'm getting older, I don't know. I mean, would it have been great to have played with Slash and Duff? Fuck yeah. I mean,
right.
I wish I was on that, because I really feel like, that's the real deal. And I would have loved to play with them, on that thing. So I guess if I would have stuck with it, I would have done it. And, and with Primus, I feel like, I guess my only regret is I feel sometimes like, God, I wish I could just go back and be in it again, and, or whatever. But in the end, I think, to answer your question, that's the thing I'm most proud of, that I did do a lot of different things, and I did it as the real deal. It felt like, you listen to Real Gone and you listen to the drums on that and the craziness on that album with Tom Waits, and you wouldn't think that that's the same drummer on Chinese Democracy.
I think that's great. And that's something I said this to Alex Grassi from Quiet Riot and Out Now with Dizzy, with Hookers and Blow, the band, not the activity. Maybe.
I love Alex.
Oh, yeah. So, Alex, I said this to him because he's been on a lot of projects, and I use a lot of sports analogies, that you have an amazing back of your baseball card. That's how I look at it. I mean, you can have somebody like a Cal Ripken who spends his entire career with the Orioles, and, I mean, take away just the PEDs for Alex Rodriguez, but, he had great careers with Seattle and Texas and the Yankees, of course. So it's just you're making your legacy in different areas.
Yep. I mean, that's one thing I want to say really quick, and Dizzy will be the first one to say this, is I came up with the name Hookers and Blow. I just wanted to put that out there. So
what?
Say what?
Alex said
he knows it too. He thinks
all right.
Thanks me every time. But that was my joke. Every time we'd be done with the gig, I'd be like, all right, dude, it's time to get some Hookers and Blow. And then he was like, I'm going to use that for my band name. And I guess now he told me the last time I saw him, they on their bus, they got the Hookers and Blow, rap.
Right.
That says Hookers and Blow on their fucking bus. He was all excited. I just saw him about 3 weeks ago or whatever. So.
Yeah, they're.
I just wanted. That's my claim to fame. That's what I'm most proud of, actually.
All right, and now we got to, I think, the most salacious fact that Dizzy has been going around lying, saying that he came up with Hookers and Blow, because that's what Alex said. He's like, one day, he's like, Dizzy just called me, and I was like, yeah, that's a cool name. But now I know that Brain came up with it. So and that's the name for a reason, Brain.
He better fucking take it back, because he knows I did it. That was my thing. I always used to joke with that. Yeah.
Oh, that's.
He'll admit to it if you put him on the spot.
Well, if I ever get him on the podcast, I will definitely ask him for that.
Yeah, right on.
I know you've been awesome and we've been going a while, but I guess a few things that we did touch on earlier that I definitely want to get to this episode were the remixes, which we had the pleasure of seeing you perform with Melissa at the Clippers halftime and I believe the Rockets halftime show. So I guess tell us a little bit about the project, Melissa and Bryan, and how those came about, those halftime shows, because they were amazing. I want to see more of that. I would see a show, absolutely, of Bryan and Melissa.
Oh, that's rad. Well, thanks. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I would say when I don't think I was out of the band yet, when I left the band. I think it was right before Karam, the producer, and was the engineer when I first got there for Roy. And then when Roy got fired, Karam became the producer. Him and Eric, the other, Eric Kudo, who is the other producer. I hope I'm saying his name right. But, and I love both of them. I mean, they're still both close friends. And they were like, hey, do you want to take some of these stems and do some remixes? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds fun. Like, bring your MPC to the studio and let's just fuck around and do some rad shit. Axl wants to, have you just do some different stuff on these things. And I was, on the Chinese songs. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'd go there with Karam and Eric and we would just fuck around and we made, If the World, we took Better, we took a couple others, just other stems of stuff that we just had and just started making music and doing some cool shit. And then at that point, I had met Melissa, who, kind of came into my life and we were kind of like, hey, we kind of think alike. As she it was like the yin and the yang. I kind of had all the drums and all that kind of shit down and the percussion and all the rhythm stuff. And she had kind of the harmony stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I want to be a composer one day. And she was like, well, yeah, I mean, that sounds rad. And, we should do some stuff. And I was like, yeah, I think we should. So we started doing some composing things together and just kind of producing some bands together and whatever. And at that point, I was like finishing up some of the gun stuff. And I was like, hey, do you want to play on some of this stuff and help me do some of it? And, we started becoming Bryan and Melissa's like composing team. And so she had played on some of the stuff and all that. And then it kind of just went away. The whole thing kind of went away. And then when Mother Goose, and then Karam we would still use as a mixer, engineer, kind of producer on some of the stuff that we were doing for composing. And so Karam would mix it for us and all that. So that's how Karam met Melissa. And then when, I guess, Chris Pittman, quit Mother Goose.
Why is he called Mother Goose, by the way? Is that a known thing that I just don't know?
Yeah, I mean, it was just Mother Goose was how I first heard his name. It's like Bucket said, hey, there's this guy, Mother Goose, that's pretty rad. He's kind of like a synthesis type guy and does all this crazy shit. And, I really like him. And he's the one I'm going up to Axl's house with. So I guess, he was there for a long time. Okay. And, I don't know the intricacies of what happened, how he got, kicked out or what. Yeah. Well,
separated.
Anyway, the band, separated. Yeah. And, Karam was like, hey, what about Melissa? So Karam was kind of the one that spearheaded the whole, like, hey, let's get Melissa in the band or whatever. And at that point, Melissa and I, we were together for a while as a couple, but then we kind of realized that shit, being together and also doing music 24/7, the plane was about to fucking crash. We were doing this movie called Love Is All You Need. I think it's funny. It's ironic. Love Is All You Need. And that's when it was like tough to like be together and working on a movie, because working on movies is pretty stressful too. You got, the directors and stuff, they're all got, they're pretty, they're gone in their own way of like dealing with music and stuff like that. So it was a tough process. And so we were kind of, parting ways as a couple. And then Karam was like, hey, what about Melissa? So Melissa goes there and hangs out, and I guess, they liked her. So she got in the band. She started doing it. And when the Rockets thing came up, that was the first thing that happened. The Rockets, because when I was with her and working with her, she would do national anthems anyways for some sports teams, just some fools that we met around LA that would just be like, hey, I know the guy, the Sacramento Kings, and they need someone to sing. And, we were trying to do like an R&B thing with her own career.
Got it.
Like doing some stuff. Like I would make some beats, or, we became friends with like Manny Fresh and stuff from the whole Hot Boys crew or whatever. And, so they were trying to make beats and do stuff, and she was trying to do this R&B thing, and she was also singing at these national anthem sports events. So when this thing recently came up, it kind of went down like this. It was kind of just like I got a call from her, and it was just like, hey, the Rockets want me to sing the national anthem, but they also want me to do a halftime thing. Huh. And I was like, okay, well, great, go do a halftime thing. Like, what are you calling me for? And then she was like, well, what do you think about doing some of these remixes? And I was like, what do you mean, the Guns ones? Well, yeah, because, they're trying to promote the show. I'm in Guns, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I guess if Axl will let us, that sounds interesting, because I always wanted something to happen with those things. Mm-hmm. And so I guess, and she said, okay, well, so we kind of put a little medley together of I'm Sorry, put a new beat to that, had the other one done, but we kind of cut them up and kind of put them into like, okay, let's go into I'm Sorry, into our own little thing that we did this Kiss remix for. And we'll go into If the World with Axl. And she played it for him, and he was like, yeah, go for it. So we're just like, oh, shit, okay, this is rad. He wants us, he's lit. And so, we went and we kind of, did what we did on that Houston show. And then about 2 weeks later, they were playing in LA, and our agent, Bryce, who's over at ICM, was like, hey, I think I can get you guys on the LA, Lakers with the Clippers halftime thing. And I was like, oh, shit, okay, yeah, that would be cool. We asked Axl, and he was like, or I guess she asked Axl, and he was like, yeah, go for it. So, we did it, and I don't know. I mean, I thought it was cool, too. I mean, I would love to like, do all of them. Like, like, have, like, even at their shows, like, at the day before or something, at, like, a festival, or do it later that night at a tent or something. It's like, hey, 2,000 people get to come to this tent and see, and listen to some Guns N' Roses remixes, and we'll even do some more. I thought that would be
rad. To use the PB word of the day of the episode, that would be rad. That would absolutely sell out in 2 seconds.
Yeah, and I thought, so I don't know what's going to happen with it. It kind of just ended as we did that LA show, and then they did their last show at the Forum, and then it became, the holidays came, and it's just like, that's where it ended up. But that's sort of how it became, it got onto the halftime thing. It was through kind of Melissa singing the anthem, them asking her to do it, and then, her suggesting, why don't we do these remixes? And of course, none of it would have happened if Axl didn't agree to it.
Sure.
He let us use his voice. So that's what was so dope about it.
That was
dope now,
like, I didn't realize how well she's sick. I didn't know. I mean, obviously I've got to see the new Guns N' Roses reunited, whatever, this past summer and the summer before. So I've seen her live, but to hear her kind of soloed out and sing, I'm like, wow, I want to hear more of this. And to watch you, I'm not a fan of going to watch a DJ play. I'm not into like, hey, press a button, whatever. But you're like literally Animal from the Muppets up there, and it's a show, and you don't even have a kit. I mean, I'm like, I didn't know where my eyes were, like where we're supposed to be.
Right.
it was just it was incredible. So just the fact that you're able to do it a couple times, and I hope it does continue, and the fact that you're into it is even better.
Well, yeah, because I think what you said is, I mean, just think if I brought a real drum set up there with it too, and then one of the tracks I can play a full kit, and then another track you know what I mean? You do a little bit of cheese DJ stuff, and then and then go back and just kind of, I think that it could really put a different perspective on the. I mean, it's just so rad that Axl's open for us to let us do this. You know what I mean? That's where I'm kind of blown out.
I think it's smart of him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's rad because so I think that if we, I would be into it. It's just a matter of, I don't know. I don't know what their next steps are, what they're touring again, or if they're, what's happening. So,
That's awesome that you're open to it, though. I mean, that in itself is still pretty cool, and hopefully it does. Then I guess with talking about, that these remixes and you wanted them to see the light, and they did, is there other material that you recorded back in the Chinese days that we haven't heard yet? I mean, we've heard rumors, but do you know if you worked on anything that we haven't heard?
Well, I know there was I know that I was on about 6 or 7 other tracks that I'm not sure what happened to, and I'm not sure if he's thinking about another Chinese from that era stuff or we can do some more remixes from even the existing stuff that I already played on. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I mean, I'm open for any of that, especially on the remix tip and all that stuff, because, that's where my heart lies right now. I mean, I'm doing this tour at Bucket and stuff like that and doing it. But, it gets tough. On the level that I'd like to play on at my age, I'm feeling it, and touring. I mean, that's why I was like, you guys play. I was talking to Frank, and I was like, dude, you guys, how do you, he's like, oh, I got to pace myself. And, I can't just give it up, but I'm kind of an idiot in that way. Like, I just like to give it all. I just, I could just see myself after 2 hours, just like, what happened to Bryan? He passed out. He's dead. I don't know if I can pace it. But yeah, because it's crazy. But, seeing that last show, it was, and seeing stuff and everybody. I mean, I thought it was, it was amazing.
So you were at that last show at the Forum?
Yeah, I went to that one. Yeah.
Was that?
And I saw the Houston one, and I saw a couple others. But just seeing that show with Slash and stuff, I just, I mean, it's and Duff. I mean, they're just so awesome. It was sick.
Have you met them prior? Did you go as just a fan buying a ticket, or did you, have your, hey, I was once in Guns N' Roses access pass, and you were able to watch? Yeah,
I mean, I'm still really tight with the the people in the camp. So, as far as like being able to go, they always hook me up. I went to one of the rehearsals and stuff, and I saw Slash and met him for the first time. I've never met him before, and met Duff for the first time, but Duff actually came to the show in Houston that Melissa and I did.
Oh,
so that was cool. Yeah. He watched it and or whatever. So that was kind of cool. And I think Dizzy was there, and then Frank came, and then, I know a lot of the people still in there. Dell and I are, I love Dell. He's like, I always consider him a friend, whether or not I even had anything to do with Guns N' Roses or whatever, So I feel like, and doing some of these I've done some of these remixes. I've always felt that connection still there, or whatever.
I hope it continues. I hope it goes to a point where we have Bryan and Melissa playing the Super Bowl halftime show, because we keep getting shit after year. I mean, they missed the boat not booking Guns N' Roses. I mean, Gaga is great, but not booking Guns N' Roses, not booking Metallica. So, and that's and that kind of goes back to why. Not to cut you off, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. And we talk about obviously Guns N' Roses, but just the sound of rock and roll in general. Where is it going? And when I interviewed London Hudson and Nico, both 15 years old, I'm like, what do your friends listen to? And they all listen to SoundCloud rappers. So I like how you and Melissa are different, and I feel like you're putting a more modern spin on Guns N' Roses and the vibe, and I feel it's gonna continue the legacy after, years from now, after maybe Axl dies or whatever. I hate to say that, but whatever, he's old, but the brand will continue because it seems like the sound is somewhat, while it's keeping its core, it's evolving a little bit. And that's why I like when people like you get involved in GNR and Melissa, where you're there for Guns N' Roses, it's Axl's show, but you're bringing this new direction and breathing this new life into it. And I feel like it's going to make it just makes it bigger. And because I feel like it gives it more of a future, I feel.
Yeah, that's rad. I mean, that's the part. I mean, because I'm a rock and roller at heart. I mean, I grew up. That's like I said, those bands, the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, all that stuff. I was big into ACD, all that stuff that I talked about. That's my roots. I mean, that's where I come from. But I have to admit, when my nephew, who's 18, and he sends me, Lil Pump's new little Instagram jam with DJ Carnage, it's pretty cool.
Okay.
I listen, like, some of this is kind of sick. I'm going to say it, and I'm probably, not every GNR fan's going to dig that, but I listen to it for more of not really like, I can bypass. I listen to it for the energy in the same way as like how I looked at Jocko as never a jazz, what jazz means. It's more just, I looked at him as a fucking kick-ass, like bass player that was playing his ass off. And it's like when I get that energy, it doesn't matter what style of music it is, as long as I know that guy's in it. You know what I mean? Like that. He's ready to die for his instrument, and you know what I mean. So Sure. It's like that's the part I get from it. But and then I look at the challenge is, well, how do you keep the integrity of some of these remixes with rock, keeping the rock part, but then adding elements of the new sound,
right?
Which, like I said, my nephew, he'll go to a Guns N' Roses thing, but what does he listen to? He listens to SoundCloud rappers. Exactly what you said.
I'm just wondering when that change is going to happen. Like, I'm hoping it's going to happen. I can't say when, just because it's my love of this sound. But music is cyclical, and there is always an element, a base of rock, and every generation kind of changes it up a little bit. Art has written just many articles about the state of rock, especially living out in L.A. with the rest of the hipsters who make fun of him for liking Guns N' Roses.
Right.
But
yeah, totally. I think the one point that I want to make really quickly about that is that what I love is, for me growing up and then discovering the Chinese democracy era of GNR, which is kind of when I was in college, I loved it because, and this speaks to you as well, Bryan, and Melissa, and all the people that worked on that record. It was going away from traditional rock and roll. It was like the GNR avant-garde record, but what was cool was you guys on that record and Axl managed to maintain the core essence of what it meant to be a rock star and create a rock album. It was dangerous. It was risky. It took chances. It never compromised for anybody except the auteur, like the Citizen Kane of the band, Axl. And that's what is missing the most to me from rock and roll is everyone's compromising. Everyone's just being politically correct. Everyone's kind of bending over for the corporations and the streaming fees and blah, blah, blah. But that guy and that band and you guys on that record, I can't really think of a rock record ever since then. It's been 10 years, but what's the last rock record over the last 10 years where it was people were talking about it, people were shocked by it, people were offended by it, or hated it, loved it. And that to me is the legacy of you guys, because you brought something different. You guys didn't do a traditional rock record, but you still had the edge of rock and roll, which I think is completely gone, in my opinion, for music today.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the part that, I loved about being in the band. It was more about even what I said about even that, and I joke. I play that Lil Pump for my friends, and they send me back boo down, and I'm just well, dude, you don't see that it's just the attitude. He kind of reminded me of Axl back in, when I first saw him with the feather boa, going crazy and throwing the mic down and then jumping at at the audience after somebody. I mean, that's why I got into it, not because I can play a fucking paradiddle, you know. So it's like, yeah, it would be great. I mean, I can't wait to see what he comes up with next, you know. I mean, I hope he makes a raw, you know, just a raw album again would be killer, you know. No click, you know. The band, it's a pretty big band now, so I don't know how that'd work, but maybe if you can just get 5 people in the room jamming and really have it, you know, back to playing again. I mean, those are my favorite albums, you know, still, so.
Right on. One last, I guess, GNR question for me, just to, I guess, and then after we can wrap up as far as, you know, what you have going on, and I know you just finished a tour with Buckethead. Did we, and you don't have to answer it, did we touch on when you decided to leave? Because I know you said you kind of regret it. What was that decision like? Again, only if you can answer.
Yeah, it was, well, no, it's you know, I was having a kid, and it was interesting because for my own person, it had nothing to do with guns, you know. They're always good to me. They paid me well. You know, it had nothing to do with any personalities really for me, you know, that was in the band or whatever. It was me of a personal choice of, you know, I was having my first kid. I didn't want to miss that. So it was right in the middle of the tour. So I left. Frank took over for that month or whatever that was left. Cause I had planned it that Frank would come in and he would do that, and then I was supposed to come back. And you know, when they came back, I went back and I did about 6 shows. I think it was 6 or 7 shows. And I just remember on the last show I was just on stage, and I think it was in Night Train, and you know, and I was playing, and I just was looking at the audience, looking at myself, was looking at, you know, the whole situation, and I was like, you know what, I can't put this shit that this deserves. You know, I was like, I don't have the energy for this. It's like, I don't know. I just don't want to do this anymore. So I remember I got off stage. I think Tommy and I hit an 8-ball. No, I'm just joking. But I took the
Brilliant.
you know, I went back to my hotel, and I remember calling the manager at that time, and I just said, dude, I can't do this. I can't do it for what it needs, you know. And the reason why I regret it is because I think in that moment I wasn't thinking, you know, I was just in a weird headspace, and I wasn't thinking it fully through. I was just kind of thinking, being selfish for myself, and you know, and then I don't know. I just was like, I don't even want to play drums anymore. And I literally just stopped playing drums. I remember at that point, Serge from System of a Down called me, you know, like after he found out I quit guns, and was like, hey, I'm doing this solo thing. Will you tour with me? And I was just like, no. And I remember getting a call from that heavy manager from Korn. And he was like, that's when Korn was still pretty big, and they were like, hey, you know, the drummer just quit, and, you know, Jonathan, you know, we had talked before, I had met him, and he was like, hey, he recommends you very highly, and they want you to come and play or audition or do whatever. And I was just like, no. And he was like, what, you don't like money? And I was like, well, yeah, I love money, but I don't want to play drums anymore. And so it was kind of that. I just said didn't really want to play. And so, that's sort of how you know, it wasn't anything to do with guns. It was more just me just going, God, I want to try this composing thing. And, you know, and I have to say, composing's a lot harder than drumming for me. You know, it's like, it hasn't been like, oh yeah, now the phone just doesn't stop ringing, you know, but you know, I'm grateful. I mean, I've done some great stuff. I mean, we've done, you know, as a composing team with Melissa, we've done a lot of shit, you know, a lot of video games. We've done all of Joseph Kahn's movies. We got that new one coming out called Bodied. That's produced by Eminem.
Oh, cool.
And that's supposed to be out this year. A video game called Cyberpunk. That's another one that we got going. And
that's a good Billy Idol record.
Right, yeah. So, you know, we got some good stuff, you know. So, anyways.
I like it. And I would say that it's not because you mentioned the word selfish at all, because especially if you're having a kid, I mean, I don't have children, but I've gone through some life-changing things where your priorities just change. And if anything, this just reflects more on your nickname, Brain, and how cerebral you are. And not everything is just so obvious, with everything with you. Just like as far as, again, going in deeper and talking about your thought process. So that is, I respect that decision. And then you're open and on and yeah, just your honesty and being how candid you were about the decision and how you feel now about it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I mean, thanks for having me on,
Oh, sure. But before we go, I want to catch up with everything that's going on with you now, because that's the most important thing, what's Brain has now. So you just finished your tour with Buckethead. Are you guys going to go back on tour anytime soon, or what are the plans now?
I'm not sure. We kind of just said we wanted to finish this run of shows that we had up to the new year. And we did a New Year's show, and that was fun, and that was the last show that we did. Since then, we haven't talked about anything. I mean, I would love to do more shows with Bucket. I mean, he's probably, my favorite musician that I've ever played with, cool. And I consider him, one of my best friends. So that would be awesome, to do that. And as far as that's for drumming, that would be awesome. And,
well, before you get, I'm sorry to cut you up. Before that, how is he, okay. If I can ask about Bucket, how is he feeling health-wise? Because I know he had a health scare.
Yeah, I think he's feeling better. He's really trying to work it out. And, I think the thing is with his medication is where, if he takes the medication, I think he feels better, but I think it also has some side effects and shit like that. So I think that's where he's, bums out and gets down on, and stuff like that. But, I think he, like I said, it was like, 20-something years ago when we first met, and we've had our ups and downs, and stuff, but, it would be great to keep playing with him, yeah.
Well, I hope so, because I want to have you guys out on the East Coast so I can watch you.
Yeah, I was hoping we can hit the East Coast,
Well, you never know. So then what else is, other than, because you mentioned a lot of the composing projects and video games, anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm just, trying to finish, like, I really got into like some ambient music during, I know it sounds kind of weird, but during the composing, like period of my life, I really just started getting really into like Bryan Eno and, like just kind of, I mean, I don't want to go as far as like, meditation and that kind of, but I think that, recently I've been kind of making a lot of, ambient music that I want to put like some, trippy beats to and stuff like that, and kind of, make my own, SoundCloud, but it's not rapping. It's more like ambient trap music, I guess you can call it, or something like that. Okay. So, I've been working on that as my own personal stuff, but, I really would like to get, my goal myself would be really to get like a TV series. I would love to do like an HBO series and be able to, compose that, like, or whatever, I mean, to me, that would be the ultimate goal.
Something
or on that side.
I believe it was Dave Kushner, of course, from Velvet. He did the theme for Sons of Anarchy. So something like that?
Yep. Yeah. Like stuff like something like that, and being even the composer would be the greatest, for me, because I've never done something like that where it's like, weekly you have to kind of come up with music, and, it's a gig that, like it's really stressful and hard for a certain period of time, but I feel like that would be really fun. That's something I haven't done. Movies kind of spread over a long period of time, like in video games. Like I think when we did Infamous, that was like a year and a half of just like making music here and there and just spread. I would like to have it like try it as a steady job for 6 months and see, just like really get into composing. I just feel like it would kick my ass the way Guns did when I joined.
I love it. I can't wait to see what you have in store, what's going to come out, whether it be, whether video games or the ambient music or working out with Melissa. Maybe eventually you do that remix thing you were talking about, kind of like you set up your own little kiosk outside of a Guns N' Roses show. I can't wait. So how can fans keep in touch with you? Because I know you're not big on social media.
Yeah, I don't do it. And Bucket doesn't do it either. That's the funny part is we just don't have it. But, I do have a website, and you can go to it. It's brainarcane.com.
That's how I got you, honestly. I mean, I was...
Oh, you did? Yeah.
That's because it was one of those, I was looking for just an email address, and it was one of those empty email forms to fill out. I'm like, oh, he's never going to get this. And then when you emailed me back, I was like, whoa.
I don't get that many people because it's so gone. And my friend who is the... I just love the site because it's so out. It doesn't make any sense and it means nothing. And I have a friend who's the art director at Pixar, and so he built that for me. Oh. And he actually texted me the other day, and he's like, dude, should we just make you a regular site so people can actually figure out it's you? And I just feel like, it's holding you back from getting paid, and that's just a failure. And I'm like, no way, dude. I'm just totally into the site. This is my favorite thing. It just means nothing. And I get so many emails, after these Buckethead tours, people trying to get a whole, Bryan, I don't know if this is you because I don't understand this site, but if it is, please, that kind of stuff.
All right. Then your next project is to get a new website.
Yeah, I'm going to start promoting some of the albums and shit on that site. And I'll probably end up doing social media this year. I mean, my daughter's yelling at me and my nephews like, dude, come on, man.
Art, do you have anything?
No, this has been amazing. I mean, I would love to spend 3 hours with you talking about Buckethead because we can talk about that all day. I mean, it's just your experiences in the studio with him and what you think where you think he stands in the pantheon of rock and roll. I guess for me, it's how do you feel? What's it like playing with him? What's the uniqueness of playing with Buckethead versus somebody else?
Well, he's just the real deal, and that's the part that I get the energy off of. He really sticks to his, his whole shtick, and he doesn't try to compromise for anybody, and it comes out in his playing. And, he's just such a virtuoso that, he kicks me in the ass. I mean, it's just, and he's very, Axl, he's very particular about it's not just a free-for-all, you know what I mean? He'll be like, dude, that was too slow, or that was too fast, or, hey, you played that part wrong, or remember, it goes like this. And I'm like, oh, shit, okay. So he's constantly... keeping me on my toes. And I think that's what I like about most of the players. I've been lucky enough to play with, some of the best players in the world. I mean, Les is like that. I mean, he's just a monster. I mean, Bill Laswell, and his whole crew of people, and Bootsy and
Bootsy, oh my God!
Yeah.
Next time hopefully you come on again. I got to talk to you just more about Bootsy Collins. I got to talk. I can't even imagine what it's like to be his friend.
I mean, yeah, it's the sickest shit. I mean, it's on that world, it's how on Avant-Garde guitar shredding or whatever, it ends with Buckethead. With funk, the train ends at Bootsy's place. It's you can't get better schooling than just being at his studio and playing with him. I mean, it's just, and in watching him play the drums, I'd become a better drummer just watching him play the drums in his way. It's whatever he picks up. It's bootsified, if that makes any sense. It's shit, that's how it's supposed to go. I get it, like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's funny. I think the most important thing that I got out of this interview with you, Bryan, and I got a little bit a sense of it just through your emails and the way you write, that you just like Art and you're just a fan who happens to be doing what he loves for a living.
Yeah. I that's it, man. I mean, I mean, there's no other way to really say it. I mean, I think, when you ask me about Bucket, the reason I love playing with him is because I'm a fan of his. And so I'm just happy to be there. And I've been lucky enough to play with most of the people that I want. I mean, you know, I would have loved to play with Miles, I guess, or Prince. But besides that, I mean, the people I just mentioned, I mean, you know, I've been so lucky because I've been fans of theirs first, you know, and that's the part that makes me keep going. That's why it was a weird thing, you know, when I think I lost that. When you asked me, like, well, why did you quit Guns? Guns happened to be the band I was in, but I pretty much quit. I quit drums is what I quit. You know, it just happened to be that because I wasn't a fan anymore. So I'm trying to get that back, and I think that through playing with Bucket again is making me a fan again. So that's, you know, I've been practicing again and just getting into it.
Awesome.
Listening to some new kids and all the Gospel Chops dudes and stuff like that.
That's good. That's great to hear. And on top of being a fan, I mean, the humanness behind you is really shown through this conversation. So, I mean, I came in a fan, and I'm leaving even a bigger brain fan. So this has just been, like what Art said, this has just been too cool. And the fact that you've allowed us to talk to you for a couple hours, I can't thank you enough. If any project or if you just want to talk about video games, you're always welcome to come on again. If you're ever in New York, we're in the same building as Q104, Z100, you know, right here in Tribeca. You're more than welcome to come down. We don't have to talk about Guns N' Roses every time. Anyone who listens to this show still cares about what you have to say. So I just can't thank you enough.
Again, thanks again, and I'll definitely, you know, I'll keep in touch if we decide to tour and we're in the East Coast for sure.
Absolutely.
Right on, dude.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to us. You're the greatest, man. Really humble and really kind, and you know it's been an honor.
Ditto.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, and I'll keep in touch, and
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
So that was fucking cool. The fact that Bryan spoke to us for over 2 hours is insane. He didn't have to talk to us at all. He gave us his time. He was so candid and open with everything. What do you think of the interview? What do you think of it? Because I'm happy.
That conversation was insane. He's so cool. He's so humble. And like those are the guys that like inspire me to keep doing what I do, because you meet these guys and they're just cool. They're fans. They're more into it than we are. And it's like he's just a good dude, and he talked about everything and no holds barred. Nothing was like off limits. He was super just fuck, man. It was awesome, dude. And it's stuff about Buckethead and Les Claypool. You know, the one thing is, God, I wish I would have more time, because I dig into Primus for like 10 hours with that guy. That was so cool. Like, seriously, I played a bass because of Les Claypool, so I can just go off on that for years.
I remember you, like, when I asked you to join me in this interview, when you told me that, I was like, whoa. I was asking for all these other wonderful reasons, but the fact that just added more to it. So, like you said, hopefully he comes on again and he does more work with Melissa or whatever project he has, albeit with, whether it's with Bucket or whatever. Plenty more things. I mean, 2 hours wasn't enough. That's what's insane. The fact that's what it goes to show you. How could you do a podcast on Guns N' Roses 42 episodes later? How could he talk to Bryan for 2 hours? It was just, and he said, he's like, am I talking too much? And no, we're hanging on every fucking word. So that's so cool. And that's what we want here on Appetite for Distortion. Organic, fun conversations that, of course, revolve around Guns N' Roses. But we want to find about the people who are involved or fans. We've been getting a lot of fan emails because I have mentioned, of course, guest co-hosts, but I do want to do more fan spotlight episodes, just like we did with Sir Kev from Ireland. I got hit up by the guy who played bass, I believe, in Mr. Brownstone, a now defunct Guns N' Roses cover band that once played David Letterman. Yeah, so he reached out to me, and he's down with the future interview. And just keep the feedback coming, because I forgive me, I forget the guy's name, but he's like, I'm just a Korean dude from Chicago with a family, and this podcast gives me, you know, something to look forward to, my shitty life. And he's like, I've been a fan since episode 1, but this is the first time I'm reaching out. Whoa, that's so fucking cool. So reach out, you know, whether it's you want to be a part of the show, whether you have an idea or just positive feedback. I just kind of put out some of the places that we've had listeners: Denmark, Ireland, Portugal, the UK, Canada, of course, every state in the US, Germany, Sweden. I mean, it's just fucking everywhere, and it's just so fucking cool. And I keep cursing because Bryan was cursing so much, and I think he's kind of got it into me a little bit. So just keep it coming. Art, unless you have anything else to say?
No, the only thing I'll say is you guys listen in. You guys are a hardcore fan. If there's anything that you guys could help fact check, if there's any questions, weird shit that came up that we couldn't kind of figure out, or maybe Bryan himself was kind of having a quote unquote brain fart. Or, if there's anything like that, like the songs he mentioned that he couldn't remember, things like that, please, send it over to us.
Yes.
Bring it up on social media, post about it on MyDNR or whatever. Let's build the history of this fucking record and this artist and this band, and together, why not?
100%. We always welcome that. Please correct us. It's not like I have a producer who's fact checking everything. The guy Bryan has worked on 1 million songs, so it's kind of humorous and it's cool that he laughed at it. But fill in the blanks that we left out. Absolutely. So definitely piggyback on Art Tavana's sentiment, and of course follow Art Tavana on Twitter, because if you're not following him, you're doing it wrong. It's very smart, very funny. Of course, a lot of GNR stuff, a lot of wrestling stuff. Even if we weren't friends, I would definitely follow you. You're a good time. As I don't know, that sounded weirder than I wanted, but I'll stick with it. So that concludes episode 42 of Appetite for Distortion. My name has been and will continue to be Brando. Please follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeart, Spreaker. That is all the podcast platforms that we're on. Please leave a review. Tell your friends about us. When that happens, bigger and better interviews, more content for you, and I have more fun. Everybody wins. So as far as the next episode of Appetite for Distortion is concerned, when will you see it? Well, as Axl Rose once said about Chinese democracy, I don't know if as soon as the word, but you'll see it.
You've been listening to the Distorted Minds of Appetite for Distortion. Follow the guys on Twitter at The AFD Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/The AFD Show.
Thanks to the lame-ass security, I'm going home.